so we can.
Oh, you love her.
So you can participate.
Sorry.
Rolled it.
Good dog.
That's your goal, right?
Put them together.
That is, that is for
That's
really rough. It's a long way
They
around.
smell all right, I think.
Bob?
Sir?
Is there an agenda somewhere?
It's on,
No.
oh,
It's on the agenda? There's no agenda?
it's on this computer.
Nice to go on.
You can have mine.
How are you?
I've got my computer.
Mr. Woods, you're welcome to sit here.
All right. I wasn't sure.
Hi, hello.
All right, I have that on.
Thank you.
Jared's in surgery, so he's gonna text me
Won't be here, Bill. So what you got?
half an hour ago-ish. So
Words.
For Nate.
Oh, is it?
Jefferson, Terry, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. It's 4:02. You could stand and join me in pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening or good afternoon. We are going to move something up on the agenda, the approval or denial of a superintendent contract so that Mr. Woods can participate in our discussion on what we have on our agenda today. Make a motion to,
It's up to us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we move, change the agenda to the approval of Superintendent Woods's contract up to the top of the agenda.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? All those in
Wait.
favor? Yes.
Is this just a motion to move it to the top and then
Yes.
we're gonna, okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so our next line of business would be the approval or denial of the superintendent contract. So I believe our legal counsel, Amy White, sent the contract out to myself and Terry and Bob.
I have it as well. I gotta go get it, but I have the official one on my desk for everyone to sign. It's printed in color and.
Okay, thank you.
So there's something that says what I read last night there.
I don't think she added anything. I do know that when I went to print this, there was an addendum as well.
I read it with the
So,
addendum.
so I read it. Does everybody know that there was an addendum?
On the back,
The standard contract is the first couple pages and then the addendum is the rest of it.
Heather, do you know if Miss White
okay.
added anything or is it the same just in color, you said?
I found 2 typos, like a space, an extra space and something else that I corrected in it. But other than that, it was the same one that she sent everybody else.
Madam Chairman, I'd feel more comfortable since this is the Emmett School District business. If I could sit down there until you're done,
Be my guest, Mr. Thane.
because this isn't my decision.
Yeah. Where are you going?
Madam Chair, Bill's not with us, right?
Bill is gone.
Okay, did he have any questions or?
He called me and he had one question and I'm ready to address it when we get to that point.
Okay.
Well, we can just, any discussion, please feel free to ask your questions and let's discuss and get
Okay,
things
but there's
ironed
only
out.
one concern Bob and I had, and I shared that with you, is about the divorce, and I talked to Mr. Woods about it. On section 12, line A, it says throughout the term of this contract, Mr. Woods shall be subject to discharge for sufficient cause. does that mean that whatever we decide as a board is sufficient cause is the way it works, or somebody explain that sufficient cause to me?
I can tell you my understanding of that would be, a violation of the code of ethics or a severe violation of your district policy, is how I would read it. I did something like that.
That's pretty well.
And it would have to be knowingly did it. If it was, I broke a policy because I didn't know it was there, in the first 3 weeks, that's different. Does that make sense?
I just wanted to, I wasn't sure what it meant, because what Bill and I were looking for is a goal setting. In other words, in the term of your contract, 2 years down the road, everything's still going south and nothing's going north. And we feel that that's not the direction we want to go in. Does this section 12, does that give us the ability to say that's part company?
My personal opinion, and mine is, if it's been in my evaluations and it's been going south, then yeah, we're on that path. But if my evaluations have been, hey, we've been 3s, 4s all the way through, and all of a sudden you don't like it, then it becomes, whoa. Then I'd be going, let's have legal look at that one. Does that make sense? If my evaluations are showing it up, that's how I would respond. And like, yeah, I'm not getting there.
Madam Chair, correct me if I'm wrong. So after 2 years, essentially have been 4 evaluations. In 3 years, there'll be 6. So
yeah,
if there's a pattern of deficient,
right,
then
that would be your sufficient. I would see that. Yes.
Okay, that's what we were concerned about, because we don't want a lame duck superintendent working for a year under the same scenario.
Yeah.
We want to move on, and that's where we're at today.
Yep.
So if that's sufficient, then we're happy with it.
When we had our discussions on the review process, and Craig brought this up, is it's an ongoing process. We do it probably every quarter, and he's going to keep us up to date where we're going all the way through the year. So by the time we get to May, it's going to be done.
mm-hmm.
So we ought to not have any surprises, and we ought to agree on our goals and objectives up front, which we've got to do soon after we sign this contract, and we'll get there.
Good.
Does that make sense? And then the other thing that we talked about is at the end of the year, your addendum would be an agreement. At that point, you would say, yeah, we're headed down the right path. And I may ask, well, can you roll another year up on it so it becomes another 3-year contract, which is we continue down that path. And if all of a sudden you're saying, no, you didn't hit my standards, we're going to keep it at 2. That's my first knowing that, hey, I've got to either figure it out or we're going the wrong path, the wrong direction. Does that make sense? That's what we had talked about. So that was my understanding.
The issue I have with contracts is if we don't discuss the divorce while everything is in an even playing field, you get emotions and it makes it more difficult. So I appreciate your candor on this.
Okay.
Madam Chair, we're discussing the divorce before we actually get married.
Yeah.
And just full disclosure too, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but essentially the old contract that was in play was a 1-page contract for the previous superintendent. This is essentially a 9-page contract, so it's far more detailed than the previous contract.
First 2 pages is what our old contract was.
And so there's an additional 7.
The addendum. Yeah. This is the state mandated.
Yeah.
I had one question.
I just wanted to say that because we're being viewed too.
Okay.
The back here.
You're in my best side. Back of my head. Perfect.
Yeah.
I think the right spot.
Madam Chair, I had
Goodness, I'm
one
left-handed.
question for our HR person. Did we make any mistakes when we did this, or have you reviewed it at all, our contract?
I looked at it a little bit today, but my understanding is we're supposed to use the state one, but this went through the lawyer, so as long as it went through the lawyers, we're good.
Well, this has to go to the state to be approved anyway.
No, it doesn't go to the actual contracts that are blank. They send us each year, they'll send us an admin contract, they'll send us a revised, retired admin contract, teacher contracts, which are category 1, 2, 3, and renewable. They'll send us, it's formatted contracts that we are supposed to use. But since the lawyer has seen this, so I'm out of it, I guess it's good to go. Yankees are the lawyer and she's toughed up. I am not a lawyer.
Okay, my understanding is it still has to go over to the state for, after we sign it.
The addendum will,
The addendum will.
yes.
Okay.
And that's my question was, we plugged in some figures for sick pay. And we plugged in,
Sick pay, I looked at all that.
That's all okay?
Vacation, sick and all that is on the up and up.
okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
That was my initial thought of you, and we talked the last time.
I made sure I looked at all
Okay.
that. It's on, same thing everybody else gets.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? Okay, need to make a motion to,
Madam Chair, I
Yeah.
make a motion that we approve the contract for Craig Woods to be our superintendent for the ensuing 3 years.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
It's 3 years minus a few days because it ends on June 30th. Starts on August or July 25th.
Fifth?
Yes, today.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Jefferson?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now it's official. Now it's official.
Now, herd of board members,
Both people.
come on up, Mr. Thane.
I went in head first.
I didn't mean to further, I didn't want to hire. See Mr. Woods hired.
Steven, what's going on here?
No, I'm thrilled to have you here. I just wanted to make sure that it was their decision, not ours. So, yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Excited to have you here.
Excited to be back in the valley, or in this valley, I guess we should say.
Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the ESD 221 and PERDA service agreement. And Pat went and made copies, and there are two.
Hey,
Yes,
when I was-
so that's why it was, there's not two services agreements, there's what we're gonna be passing out and then the CTE. So there's two different things there's just two different things on our agenda. So if anybody needs a copy, I'll hand it down.
There's two, I think.
I need one. I would like them to. This is our agreement. Oh, this
What are
is,
you talking about?
No, I think it's the MOU right now.
Doing the MOU first?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So when I went online and clicked on the 2014 professional services agreement, this is the old one that was signed by Mike Middle. And so PERDA is proposing that we now move to a memorandum of understanding. Everyone can have a chance to read this over.
Madam Chairman,
Hmm.
because we have two, you might explain the difference between the two and
Yeah.
fit together.
If you would like to do that,
I was just, yeah.
because I'm not the PERDA person.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I would like to that.
yes,
Oh, okay.
thank you.
Well, Pat, do you want to do the honors or do you want me to?
Up to you. I can just go.
Go for it.
So we had, the first, the MOU basically was going to take the place of our previous 2014 to 2019 services agreement. The service agreement that we had there, it was added on. The history behind it was that the school district at that time felt that we needed to pay more money to the district than just what the divisor rate, the disbursement between the two, the 12 to 1 and the 18.6 to 1. And so as you see down on the very bottom, you'll see that we get 195 ADA is what we kind of have an agreement with Emmett School District. And that was even set forth by Tim Hill. He was at that meeting, Tim Hill and Wayne and Bill, and when they first did this. And he said, that's the best way to do it. So we get 195 ADA. And then what they do is divided by the divisor, the 18.5, then the unit, is calculated out. So it shows an example there, 195 divided by the 18.5 gets that divisor. Then that is times the minimum amount that we have per. And that's where we come up with the 289,664. And that's what we give back to the district to kind of make them whole for the 195. The services agreement was added on because they, at that time, from what Jim Korea had stated, was that the history behind it was they wanted more money because they were providing services to us, i.e. like the special ed, payroll, technology, IC's reporting, that kind of stuff. And so they calculated, I think it was at first, it was going to be, they wanted around 300,000. And then they finally talked down, negotiated down to 107,000. And so then that was drafted up in the original services agreement to be divided out, so much for payroll, so much for tech, so much for IC, so much for this. And so I was like, instead of going through all of that, because there's no extra people hired to have PERTA here because you have the same amount of kids. So you do provide the services as far as special ed, IC's reporting, and the student service attendance and the facilities, of course. But I was thinking, my idea was, since we're already doing the 195 calculation and sending it 289,000 back, that we can almost wipe out the services agreement and just combine that in as a memorandum of understanding and still doing the division. And that's going to go up every year because the student goes up, the amount goes up. But then that would all be rolled into that amount that we kick back to the district.
So memorandum of understanding replaces
The original professional
14
services
page.
agreement of 2014 to 2019. This professional, the fiscal year 20 professional services agreement was drafted up by the lawyers so that we would be able to work in accordance with the Emmett School District, and Rich and myself would work together with the hiring of a occupational certified teacher for the middle school position to take, take the place of the freshman will eventually, not this year, but next year. And this would kind of drafts up what PERTA would be doing and what Emmett would be doing kind of in together with it. So we would be doing both of us would be doing the hiring. We would be doing the paying for the employee, and they would be Rich would do the evaluations of it because it's in his building. So he'd do the evaluations, then I can come through and do some walkthrough. So that's what this was for.
the purpose of the agreement
Right.
on this.
It's to provide CT education to Emmett School District students. As part of this agreement, the parties have developed a wheel to help entering the high school students identify pathways of interest. It is the intent of the parties to extend that wheel into the middle school grades. And that's one of the big things the Department of CT is pushing down into middle school now. Pretty soon they're going to start, they haven't funded it yet, but Carl Perkins has even gotten into it now.
Madam Chair, Superintendent Goff?
Yeah.
We're talking about two different things,
Correct.
correct? And you're just introducing the two
Correct.
different things, okay?
Just explaining the difference.
Right.
between the two.
Okay, back to the MOU. I think it's necessary to note that we do not require the services that we required previously now. We have our own bookkeeping service. In fact, Superintendent Goff, if you'd like to elaborate a little bit on that, back on the MOU.
Basically we're doing our own payroll, getting that done. We're doing our own technology now. Ken and I have worked together on this, and we're doing all that information. Special ed services, we still use those. Every school has to have a special ed service. And so instead of us going outside and, bringing one in, and we just said we'd use Emmett's special ed because you have to have somebody certified for that. IC's reporting, that's probably always going to come, and since we got a handshake agreement for the 195, that's always going to have to come from Emmett School District because they have to do all the calculations of where that 195 comes from. The student services and attendance are all on the same Infinite campus, so that's done with that, and then facilities, custodial, utilities, and rent. That's all combined within that also. So those four that you see there are what we currently would still be using the services, but that would be it.
So in a nutshell, this is for the
Middle school.
middle school position. This is to replace that 14-page service agreement.
Right.
I mean, that's a,
This is the service agreement, that's 14 pages.
The original one?
Yeah, this is from 2014 to
Yeah.
2019.
Right.
Madam Chairman and Mr. Chairman, superintendents and everyone. I don't see how that's spelled out. It's spelled out on the original document with dollar figures, and it's just descriptions on the other one. How do we decide how much dollars are going to change hands?
What this is it's a rolling up of the services into one cost, which is the divisor count that you have there. So taking that whole section out and just saying within that amount that we're kicking back to the district, those services would be provided within the devising of what we have between the 12-1 and 18.6-1. So instead of having two separate 289,664 and then an additional 107,000, we'd just say 289,000. And that will increase every year. It has. It's went up, between 5 to 15,000, depending on how, Idaho's doing and whatnot. So.
Because with this one, you were doing, that included payroll
Right. And technology.
and technology
Yep.
and was there something else?
health insurance.
Health insurance.
Yep.
And now those are, you guys have taken over that.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we do still provide internet access and phone services, but they handle all of their own support.
Right.
Buy all their own equipment. They tried to buy their own switches.
Yeah.
But, so there's just those two small items that we do still provide as part of tech.
Yeah. And that is because we're dealing with the same kids. We can't E-rate.
Right.
Because we don't provide a hot lunch, but the same kids are doing hot lunch through Emmett School District. So Ken said, yeah, we'll just carve out a certain amount of bandwidth. So we have 250, whatever it is, and they have the other,
I'm not sure that's
whatever it be, but yeah. So we both go out two separate paths. We're both on two separate servers. We have two separate domains. So, but you do provide that
link.
a link there.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, how would this affect the bottom line, and maybe our business manager too? How would this affect the bottom line of the school district as far as money? Cheryl?
So on the funds at the
Yes.
bottom, the ADA, that is the ADA that we're losing
Yeah.
by giving our students to PERDA. We're not the services that they're wanting to cut up here are still services that we provide to PERDA. And so if you cut those, they can't be included into this because this is just the ADA that we are losing by giving those students to PERDA. So if you add all the other
amenities.
services that we're providing, then we're losing money.
Yeah, that's the overall thing is you'd be losing 107,000.
Yeah.
That's the overall.
Madam
Yeah,
Chair,
that's, yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Explanation to Cheryl. What services are you providing beyond what's listed here?
Well, our IC reporting.
We've got that listed, yeah.
Right, these 4 services. If you just take these 4 services that you're wanting to cut and add to the 289,000, like I said, the ADA is, the
Okay.
289 is what we're,
But we're not cutting them.
those are the ones they
Those are the
want
ones
to
for,
initiate now.
yeah, those are the ones that we're still,
And how much it doesn't say in here what you're going to
that-
pay.
Madam
From
Chair,
what
that's my
Cal is saying,
question.
he's going to
To Mr. Bell.
Madam Chair, if I can. So instead of having 2 separate payments, since we are, and there's not, I don't know of another charter that's making their district whole, the authorizer whole. They don't pay charters in the state. And I got Julie Overly sent me this form. If I calculated out the 195 and what we'd owe the authorizer, it came out to about $15,800 some odd dollars. But being we are having a partnership and working together with the district, because it was a great thing that Nickram and Rush and Tim Hill and everybody decided to make it whole, then we're giving back that amount. But I don't think we should be held, That's up to you guys to decide. But the other 107,000 was basically because the district wanted more money. Even though there was not another special ed person, even though we kick out 25,000, whatever it was, there wasn't another special ed person that was hired. Even though they do the ICs reporting, there's not another ICs person that was hired. They're just providing that service. So whether PERDA was here or not, everything would be status quo. Nothing else was extra. So.
Madam, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, can I say so? I agree, you're still gonna have to do an IC report, you're gonna have to do special ed reports, but guess what? To fractionalize that out becomes a lot more work on my staff, on our staff. And so there is more time involved in it, whether it be the attendance issues, whether it be discipline issues at the buildings. And I'm not sure how it all works, but I will say that I know when you start to, because I've been at CASA and we fractionalize that out, and it's a bear for us. And so I don't want to, I'm hoping it's not an easy thing to just push a button on IC, and I know that. So there is quite a bit of time in that process that our Emmett staff are doing for you. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, Ronnie?
Well, Mr. Carter first, and then I'll go.
Well, I just wanted to share so that everybody understands that we handle all the grades, all the progress reports, all the attendance, all the letters, all the contact, all the discipline. That's handled all through us. The other thing on the ADA, and Pat, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think, and I don't know if it's changed, so it could have changed, that at one point there was like 100, you had what they considered 140 some students or something, but we could count up to 195, and we split that, if I understood, we split the 50, let's say 50 kids difference. We split that money, that's part of that money that comes to us. Is that, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, I don't know on that part. All that I know is we just do the 195.
Right, and so there's a lot of work that's going on, and I would agree with the superintendent on our part. Now, yes, there is some fees being paid, but there is a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort that goes into all of those. And I think it's been more than fair. A special ed teacher, I don't know if you'd have to have a full-time one, but I would say half-time one's probably gonna cost you 30,000 or so. Oh, more, okay, see, when you include benefits and retirement and,
right.
All the other things that we're doing, the register, the counselors, the attendance secretaries, all those things, it's quite a chore, so.
Madam Chair, so that 50 extra students, and you were dividing that amongst you, that was part of that 107,000? Or is that part of the
No, I believe
189?
that's part of,
It's a 289.
That was the one, that was.
Yeah,
what happened back.
so when they calculated out, and you're, Pat, you correct me, they couldn't count whole students because they either have to be half-time or full-time, excuse me,
Like
full-time.
5 or 1.
Yes, and so what they did was they would say, okay, he's got 1 period of ag and she's got this and she's got that, and they calculate all those together and count that, okay, there's enough there for 1 full-time student. And so it equated out, and don't quote me on the number, like 140, 100, somewhere in that range. And then the difference, but the state said, well, you can count 195. I think if we go to 200, then your funding changes or something.
Yeah, it goes to
along that
13 to 1 instead of 12.
So that's why we
Right.
stayed at 195. So those 50 kids, let's say in there, that's money that's 50 kids they don't have and 50 kids that we don't have, but we can collect that money. And I believe then they split that, whatever that generated. So that's extra money that came back to them and came back to us in this weird funding formula and so forth. But that 100 and, I don't know what it is exactly, 105, 100 and whatever, that was, and yes, they have taken back payroll and they've taken back a lot of their network, but there's still a lot of work that's being done.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And services provided.
Madam Chair, why can't we find some way to subtract the services that they're taking care of themselves off of that?
That's basically what we've done.
Yeah. Madam Chair, and definitely we can. I totally agree.
Well, when you say that's basically what you done, though, you're wanting to take the whole 107,000, but some of these services are still being provided, so.
And so what I was, and I know I did hear the 147 before. I think that might have been when we first did the services agreement. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Because right now, we can't bank on 147 if if we were doing 165 and now we're doing 185 or 200, as far as how many people we're pushing through. Because what I do is I calculate out, I get it from Chris Roper every year. I calculate out every single period that we have students and divide it by the amount of periods we have. And that gives a total amount. And we've increased every year. And so even if that calculation jumps up to 230, don't care because we're only claiming 195. Does that make sense? So, because that's the agreement that we intended. So as far as the 147 versus whatever, I think the only thing that we're doing is just making sure we're taking the divisor out, right? And then calculating that out.
Sorry, Pat, I didn't hear the first part.
We're just taking the divisor between what we have for the 195 and it's divided by the 18.5. And then you're taking that times whatever the state gives per student, I imagine, or whatever it is, right? And then that's the total amount that we would have. So that's the difference between the 12 or whatever that, the 18.5 divided by the 195.
It's the difference of what we would have received versus what you received.
Right. So that kind of makes it whole, so to speak. So.
And we've also come to the table every year with improvements on the buildings and anything that needed to be taken care of, we've always reached in our account and paid for it. So the district really hasn't lost on this ever. The years I've been aboard, it was always a positive thing for the district that we were here. Susan, you
I
want to?
agree with Mr. White, but I also, they only pay I think it's $1 rent.
Yeah,
And
right.
that was part of the agreement, because the rent was $1, then they would take care of the facility or something along that line.
Our students, right?
Per building or?
So, Madam Chair, if I may, the 107,000 was the amount the district came to that they wanted. It wasn't, there was no services agreement. They wanted extra money. So Bill and Jim Correa said, we can give you 107,000. And then, well, we got to make sure we put it on the services. No, we're just going to give you an extra 107,000. Then they came up with a services agreement, the district, to say, well, we got to verify it, justify it some way. So then they started tacking all that money onto it. It was just extra money the district wanted for Purdy to give. And so that's where, and I can come and calculate this out and see what we got for the ones that you guys are still providing. I can do that, Craig and I can sit down and figure that out, not a problem. I was just saying, with the way that it was approached, that I heard from Jim Correa, and he's, he doesn't have a dog in the fight. That's what he said. It was this divisor that we did was the origination, the establishment. The extra 107, which started out at 280 or 300,000, he said, but they narrowed it down to 1.7. That was after the fact. And that was just money that we were supposed to give back to or the district wanted to have. So,
Madam Chairman, let's try clarifying a little bit. This number at the bottom, the 195.88. Can we walk through those numbers a little bit? Well, the 195 divided by 18.5 is the Emmett divisor.
correct.
So that gets you 10.5 units,
10.5405.
classroom units,
Right.
whatever.
Yep.
So, but the divisor for PERD is what?
12.
12.
Yep.
12. So if we were to divide 195 by 12, then the units we get are 16.25. So isn't that, so that's a difference of about 6, more or less, a little less than 6. Is that how you come up with the number? Isn't that how we come up with the number of 281, 289?
Well, we continue that 10.5405 and take that times whatever the state generates out.
Why 10? What's, you're saying that's what Emmett School District would have gotten?
Correct. If I'm not right, that's the difference between.
So it's not the difference, it's what they would have gotten
Yeah.
if PERDA didn't exist.
Good.
They would have gotten the,
Extra 289,664.
So just make sure the numbers work out for me. I'm kind of slow.
I'll remember that when you're bailing hay.
Why?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I have no problem with taking some of the money back. I just, with what Superintendent Woods is saying and
Okay.
Cheryl's saying, if these services are being provided and it's incurring extra time on staff, I think that ought to be compensated. I don't know what that amount is. I don't know that it needs to be just. Right.
Madam Chair, Ron, I agree with you on that. I really do. The main thing that I do think that is important to understand is that the money based on the 195, that is not a guarantee that Emmett would have been getting that without PERDA, because we have created so many more programs. So there's extreme value on both ends, and I think that needs to be understood, and I know Mr. Woods more than anybody does understand that through CASA. But I would not, in no way, shape, or form does this group, PERDA, want to sidestep our obligation to the Emmett School District and the handshake.
I don't think.
And if there's a value that's put to, if that, whatever we need to do to come up with agreement rather than go through something like this again, which was a bellyache from the beginning. I just think what we need to do is come to a meeting of the mind, and maybe the best thing to do is to have the two superintendents get together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that would be my suggestion.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
can I speak?
I knew you were.
You knew I would, I just jumped right in?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. On this, is there something in this, if we just change dates, that you guys have heartburn over right now? I mean, the 14 pages are things in there going, wait a second, why do we have it in there?
I think there are a couple of things and I think that's something the two of you need to, would you agree, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, that'd be fine. We, I think, are making a proposal. If you have a different perspective, let's.
Right.
If we can come to where that compromise is.
I don't have enough perspective yet, so I'd love to just look at it and sit down, okay, where's your heartburn in it, and here's where our
You
heartburn
haven't
is.
seen it.
Not in enough detail.
Right.
I looked at it just briefly, and I'm sorry that I wasn't prepared, but, we talked about meeting tomorrow. We can sit down and look at some things tomorrow, if that'd be okay, with the board as well.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, the only question I have is, I think when we did our budget for them at school district, we budgeted in this, Cheryl, am I correct? The 107 is budgeted in our next year's budget, so we've got to be careful because we are on a tight rope this year. Some things we've done so far that we need to manage our dollars well. And if this is something maybe that we can leave this up to superintendents to iron out, but maybe it can be phased in over several years to get to where you want to be, and the school district's just not left hanging, might work out.
I think that's reasonable.
Mr. Jones?
I just, in this agreement, we talk about a teacher that you're going to provide to the middle school, is that correct?
the next one.
That's next on the
Yeah.
agenda,
What I want, those dollars you're spending, are you going to want that money back?
No, I mean, that's just something we were looking to provide because it's going to benefit career tech.
I understand it, but if
Right.
we're tit for tat, I mean.
If that's all, we could, and that's maybe something, Mr. Woods and I need to discuss on this and say, well.
Put it on your agenda and
And then
talk
get
about
back
it.
to you guys.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I may, and to get back to the dollar, it is, that was actually brought up when Mr. Russ talked to how they do it with West Data. And West Data does that. They'll lease out the building for $1 each one of their areas, and that's why they did the same here. So it's not like we're for $1. That's just that was the cleanest way for them to do it. He had mentioned that to me a long time ago, but that's why they set that
It
up.
has to do with liability and.
Sure, absolutely.
Madam Chair, that's exactly what it's got to do with. It's no different than if you go buy lease a vehicle.
Yep.
It's a They lease it to you for $1 and it's all got to do with liability.
Well, Madam Chair, do we need to make just an agreement rather than a motion, but an agreement that the two superintendents will get together and get back to us?
Mhm.
Respective boards.
To all of us
Because we don't want
without,
budget unnecessarily.
on the MOU,
I think that's a good idea.
without doing anything against the open meeting law. So,
I bit my tongue hard.
yeah. So however if you want to have a special meeting or whatever, I would strongly suggest that the two of you get together, and if they need to bring in the two chairs, whatever, just so we can get something.
Okay, I think we've kind of aired where we are, and so let's move ahead. I think that's a good way to do it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Moving on. Now we're going to talk about the middle school teacher CTE agreement.
How would you like to proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Who do you suggest can explain this the best, Mr. Thane?
Well, I think probably the two that worked on it could explain it the best. Pat?
I had, Chair, I had Chris Jorgensen, the attorney, actually draft this up.
Mm-hmm.
He's done some professional service agreements for some other charters around. He's really probably one of the most knowledgeable in charters within the state as far as attorneys go. And so he drafted this up. When he shot it back to me, Mr. Weiniger and I got together and we sat down, took out a couple words that seemed like it wasn't cohesive to show that we're working together as and cooperative. It was more like a PERDA will, and instead of like we will, so we just kind of dressed that up so we could have some sort of common ground where both of us are working together on this and getting it done. This would say that we basically, kind of, it gives the description of the duties of PERDA and duties of Emmett. You can read those, page 2 and 3.
And Madam Chairman, Pat, I think that's really the guts of it, the duties of PERDA and duties of Emmett. The rest of it about data privacy, security, relationship with parties. A lot of these things are kind of common, just common language in contracts. But so I think focusing on the duties of the two, and the way the contract is written, Porter will hire the teacher responsible for salaries and benefits. But there's a relationship between, particularly them at middle school, and this teacher that's a little tricky. So you might want to read that. And I think we've done. It lays out kind of what we're trying to do, where Mr. Weiniger is going to perform the evaluations. That's duties of Emmett, section C. And curriculum, who's going to oversee the employee and the curriculum are the two. It's kind of a work in progress, and I don't think it's spelled out perfectly in the contract, but I don't know how much better you can get without getting real prescriptive.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I read this and boy, some lawyer had to be the guy we wouldn't think like this. There's more.
Always, yeah.
Yeah. It's what you can and can't do. But I got down to the duties of PERDA, and it talks about PERDA shall have control with the input from Emmett over the curriculum taught by the CTE teacher. And you get over here on duties of Emmett, and Emmett has the right to collaborate with PERDA regarding the CTE standing curriculum and necessary equipment. It was confusing to me. You're saying you haven't quite got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and maybe that's the result of it.
Yeah.
So maybe next year you come back and say, hey, this is what we worked out and this is what, so is that, am I looking at that as?
Madam Chair, you're exactly right. This is what consider, they did a couple alpha tests. This is a beta test. So they're doing the same thing. The Department of CT is working with, I think, 7 other programs that are doing it in the middle school. And they're doing the same type of thing. It's a, baptism by fire, so to speak. Get in there, see what works, what doesn't work, make things go. And so this basically is a draft beta test. And I imagine Rich and I are going to get together and discuss and say, this worked, this didn't work. This is where we want to change it to. And it's a work in progress.
So this gives you the latitude to adjust.
Absolutely. I feel the case.
Madam Chairman, I think for this to work, there's got to be a working relationship because we really can't define it in the contract.
Yeah.
So there's a little leap of faith here.
The do's and don'ts scared me. And then I read the duties and I thought, well, there's a little wiggle room in here. So.
Yeah, which is good and bad. It really depends on our goodwill, and how middle school and PERDA administration can work together. And so we need to keep track of this to see what's happening and maybe give the direction to what direction we want them to go. Hopefully there's enough wiggle room in the document. But if there's some real concern on the Emmett School District side, please contact the PERDA board and we'll give Pat direction to what your concerns are. And of course, Mr. Weininger and Mr. Goff will be visiting.
Madam Chair.
I know, go ahead.
No.
Mr. Weininger.
Yes, Madam Chair. As Pat stated, we talked through some things. As far as the contract goes, it's hard to delineate, we started talking about, the original language said PERDA had exclusive authority, exclusive, and I say, I don't like exclusive, I work at the honest.
No.
So we got rid of that, but I know talking with Dan Ariola and our lawyer and Cheryl, I know there's still some concerns about funding, and I know we talked with the PERDA board about the same thing. So, I'd love to see this thing take off this year. Obviously, to have a certified teacher in the classroom versus a classified aide doing our pathways course would be a great benefit to us. However, I do want to make sure nobody's getting hurt in the process financially, fiscally. So, I'd like to move forward. However, I do think we need to make sure those I's are dotted and T's are crossed and make sure that we don't get down the road and there's $80,000 that someone's got to come up with. It's not there. So.
Madam Chair, Mr. Reinger, while you're up, so I got like a future heartburn question here. So in the duties of Emmett on B, it says Emmett has the authority to assign the CTE teacher to additional tasks if all CTE duties are otherwise performed and accounted for. Superintendent Goff and Mr. Reininger, what did you guys have in mind in that?
Well, so the reason for that is that, we have 210 eighth grade students that are going to be taking this course, which equals out to about 8 or 9 sections. So we'll have a couple extra sections open that we're going to put this teacher in to do our 5th grade computer course.
Okay, so it'd still be kind of a CTE type program.
Yeah, it is.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Woods.
I hate to throw a monkey wrench into it. I agree with that part, but I love the idea of this program. I think it'd be great. But to clean this up, probably if you want to do it this year, would it not be better for the Emmett to employ this employee? Because then we don't have to worry about fractional ADA at the 8th grade. You're not receiving any CTE funding for them, right? Because 8th grade, you cannot receive CTE funding.
We're not going to
But
get
we
any
don't need the
funding.
fractional ADA.
Yeah, so if we kept them as an employee and, with you being a part of the hiring, you with the curriculum this first year, then you can work out those kinks and it'd be a lot cleaner probably to do something like that, whether we have the money or it would be reimbursed back, however we were going to do that. But because then we could clean up all that language. It's an idea. Something for you to think about and then we can talk about it.
Well, we did have that discussion when we met
a couple of weeks ago, I guess now. There's a couple of different ways to go, and they're both valid. There will be no fractional attendance. We're not claiming any attendance.
Okay.
So that
Same
part,
thing like an IDLA provider or anybody who does the services in there.
But won't we, if they're leaving, if they're your employee, that's the issue we run into. If they're your employee, then we're gonna show a gap that they're not in our classes. It'll be a period that they're gone. And so, we're on a 7-period day or 5-period day? 5 there. So I don't know how it may hurt our funding. Does that make sense ADA wise?
ADA
If they're
is
not
zero,
an
half and
employee.
full, right? So if they don't show up for one period, it should not affect that at all because it's zero, half.
I'm sorry, what was,
If they're recorded, ICE is recorded by period.
yeah,
Right, absolutely, absolutely. But the attendance is zero, half and full.
correct. I just want to make sure we
Yeah.
have all of our stuff and as an Emmett employee, it wouldn't be a problem because they would show it every single
Absolutely.
period. So
Absolutely.
that was what I was thinking is, boy, we want to make sure we're on that.
did
path.
we contact the State Department to ask them about this
I haven't gotten anybody back. Nobody's contacted me back on that, so.
summer vacation?
For fractional ADA, would that be Michelle?
She's on vacation.
Okay.
Madam Chair, my understanding, I was in the same meeting, we were all talking about that, was that Rich was gonna post that position and start the hiring process. Has that been accomplished or?
So Pat actually posted the position.
Okay.
So we have some applicants. We haven't interviewed or anything like that.
Because I know our intent at the meeting was to move forward. And we're
Barring
these kinks, and that we were Porter was going to pay the bill. And we didn't have any intention of taking any money away from school district. We left it up to the attorneys to work out the details.
Oh, okay.
That was the bottom line.
So they're,
Yeah, if we could, I mean, that's kind of the same thing. So we would hire and then you would just pay us? Is that?
Either, I don't know. I personally don't, but if that's the best way to get this thing done, then let's do it. You know what I mean? Because I don't like the idea of having a classified staff in there. I don't think that works well. I don't like them behind a computer and just learning from that. I like hands-on stuff because that's career tech.
Yeah.
And so I think if that's the case, then you and I need to sit down and pencil out, then that might wash clean. Who knows? You know, we might be able to do something with the MOU and build within that. We'll do it. So
Madam Chair, another thing it does for the district is it frees up about $50,000 that we were going to expend for the classified staff and the IDLA program. So that money it was included in the levy. So
well,
it would be
Madam Chair,
money
that
we
won't be
could,
till next year though, right? Because we're stuck with it this year though, right? This next school year.
So the funding for the position was funded through the levy.
Right.
For paraprofessional plus the IDLA course. Yeah, it was, yeah.
I think it was 20 and 30 or something like that.
Right.
My memory works, but it's more
That's for
very
this
good.
year.
Yeah, for this
It
year.
starts this year.
That's
Madam
this
Chair,
year.
if you guys want to continue to move in that direction and
So
do it
we're
for
gonna-
this year, that's
That's what I'm asking. I was under the assumption, Madam Chair, that this was for the following year, that
Oh.
we were doing IDLA
No,
I thought it was for this year.
this year.
The proposal from Curta was for this coming year.
this year.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought.
Coming 2
Madam
weeks from
Chair,
now.
given the complexity of what we're talking about, I would put these heads together and have them hash it out and come back to the board and
Yes.
have a final thought instead of sitting here plowing the ground over and over.
Well, the main difference, Madam Chairman, is basically who employee it is. If it's
Yeah.
Emmett
Well,
School
let you
District's
guys decide it.
employee, then the contract falls a certain way. If we leave it the way it is now, it falls a certain way, and that's,
Yeah.
so. Could I ask my board for some comments?
Sure.
Because we had discussed this and we knew there's basically two major options. One is to have them at school district hire the person, would reimburse them, and then would collaborate on what the curriculum would be. Because that was our main purpose. We kind of came down on the side of the way the contract is written. Is there any real, as they hash this out, the superintendents will hash this out, does it really make a lot of difference either way we go, as long as we have some input into what is taught?
Mr. Chair, I think it does. And one of the reasons I think it does is I think the curriculum is imperative. And not only with that curriculum, it means the tools. The tools are very expensive for that particular curriculum. And the curriculum's already been in existence for 2 years at this point. I think that the biggest fear is you let somebody else do the hiring, we're paying them to do the hiring, and they start tweaking curriculum or start doing, there needs to be a trust and a collaboration that is tight on this. This is a pilot. The truth of the matter is, it's not a pilot at the high school level. It's already been done. It's been tweaked enough. But it's definitely a pilot at the 8th grade level. And it may even want to move to the 7th or whatever. I think the agreement on PERDA's part, where the PERDA does not expect any income back at all. We would be providing the teacher the cost, but it would be in total collaboration with Mr. Weinecker. Total cooperation.
So let me just challenge that thinking a little bit, because I agree with the collaboration part. But if it's total collaboration, does it matter who the employee is?
I don't know that it does. Unless you get it, that's that trust factor again. That's the issue that you have to, you have to deal with. I've been placed in that position before. I don't know. I think a lot's going to depend on the handshake.
What's it doing? It's making noise.
And the curriculum.
Sorry.
Michelle, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think that we all agree on the curriculum, that it makes more sense for PERDA to be somewhat taking the lead on the CTE side of it, since that's what we're going to be, the instruction is going to be. On the employee side, I have a question in that it was in the levy. And so would there be a challenge to that if if PERDA puts the money in, it's switched a little bit. And so it's a question I have I'm not sure if it would be an issue, but right now we're all trying to develop trust and continue trust and be as transparent as we can. And yet I worry about somebody hearing, well, it was on the levy and you're not doing what was in the levy.
Well,
And I just worry about that. And so I'm wondering, even if the first year, if it makes sense for PERDA to do all of it, and then if it doesn't work, then to hand it over. But for clarity with our public, I always am very sensitive to that. So
I think there's two. You brought up a separate issue, and that is the legality of how you can use money on a levy, which
right.
Superintendent can
Yeah,
speak
that's
to.
clearly on your side of the table.
So that's kind of a separate issue. The issue that I'm trying to hammer out right now is who wants to be the most trusting. We want some input. Our big thing is input on the curriculum.
Right.
If it's your employee or not, that's not as big an issue for us. The curriculum is the issue. So when you talk about it, I think that's where we're coming from.
Mr. Williams.
Sure. What I think about is when you look at technical programs, we have separate summer conferences on curriculum development at those times. Well, when it becomes the school board's here employee, then it falls under a different umbrella. So, do we still include them in our summer conference activities where they get upgraded on the curriculum and the equipment and all those? There's a lot of other issues besides a teacher in front of the class, because those programs are specifically designed under technical education where that teacher has to get upgraded every summer, and whose summer conference do they go to? You see what I'm saying? And we had that problem with our own teachers over the years. So I think it is important for us to get it off the ground and see how things work. And it's our employee, and they're under our auspices as far as them keeping up to grade equipment and how they're teaching the class. I think those are important issues, but working together is what we need to be doing. So I certainly think that somewhere between there is the right thing to do.
So Madam Chairman, I didn't lose my thought. The big concern that you have, Emmett School District has, and that we have also, is we don't want to affect your attendance, your ADA. So if we can answer that question, and it's not going to hurt you, I think we'd prefer that as our employee, because there's some benefits we can give, the Emmett School District can't. If it does hurt you, then it needs to be your employee. I think that's regular.
I agree.
So if we can figure that out before we hire the person, which I think there's going to be interviews within 10 days.
Madam Chair. Steve, who's the employer, I think is one issue. Who controls that employee is another issue. So does it matter that has the employer and the control is under one hat, or can you separate that out? So here we're just talking dollars and cents. Over here, we're talking training and teaching.
Well,
and what I'm saying is, why can't you guys get together? Why are we hashing this out between us when there's questions here we can't answer yet? So I personally sit here and say, hey, get your guys in a corner and you do what's best for the children, and we'll go along with it.
Okay.
And I think that this is a 3-year pilot project, is my understanding. And so we can change things next year or as we move along. Let's just get it done.
Madam Chair, that's my next question. How come, where it's 3-year pilot, how come only the 1 year?
I didn't know. I didn't hear a 3-year pilot.
Oh, but that's what we discussed at the meeting.
Well, and we want the ability to renegotiate
He's going.
Yeah.
first couple of years.
I was in Boca Raton.
That's right.
I probably didn't pay attention to that. Sorry, my bad. That's why I'm dressed like this. Yeah, I
He's still
got
in
you.
charge.
I got you. Yeah, the issue also, just like Mr. Weiniger and I are going to get together this next week. I have 4 applicants. You might have a couple. We need to figure out who we're going to interview. The big thing is we probably should make a decision. We got to find out probably tomorrow to see who is going to be, whose employee they are. Because if I got somebody that's going to be moving from the East Coast or from Los Angeles coming up, if they're one of the ones, then they're going to have, they're going to say, well, who's the employer? Well, it could be Emmett School District or it could be Pay at River Technical. And they probably want a definite answer right away. So
Get that figured out.
Madam Chair, my question is, do we want to do it? Is this something that your board and our board wants to do? Is it something that Mr. Weiniger wants to do? Or is it something that he'd rather not do? I think that's very important.
You're on the spot.
Yeah, as I stated before, I mean, obviously these kids feed into both the high school and the PRITA programs. And we need to work together to figure that out. Will it be the same will that they're doing right now in the 9th grade? Obviously not. We don't have the space or facility to do it that way, but at the 8th grade level, it opens up some things to, really get these kids thinking about what do I want to do in high school and get them on that path so they can jump right into that 9th grade and say, okay, yeah, I'm going auto, or I'm going engineering, or I'm going to be an English teacher. Forget that stuff.
Choices.
So I'm on board as far as trying to make this thing work. I don't. I know PRITA is really concerned about having control of that curriculum there. And like I mentioned before, if my kids that are right now taking computer science discovery class with Mrs. Hopper, and she's doing something that they're never going to see again at the high school, why are we doing that? We definitely need to increase that collaboration and figure this piece out. And obviously there's some trust issues from the past that we need to work through and get over. And I mean, I'm committed to working with you, whether it's Emmett School District employee or yours, but I see moving forward that some good things will come from it. We just need to
Yeah, thank you.
Rich, have you and Pat shared vision? Have you two sat down and talked about what you envision and what you envision? Because I heard you say, it was kind of interesting, and that was my point about the tools. I don't think anybody totally understands unless they've been dealing with professional technical education. They don't realize the expense in the tools. IDLA cannot provide what we're trying to provide, what you and Pat are trying to provide. And that's why when I say the pilot part of it, you've just hit the nail on the head. You're going to be doing in one space and creating an atmosphere in one space for that's really conducive to that age group, to the 8th grade, 7th grade even maybe. But you're going to be creating an atmosphere that is mind-boggling for some people, but it's sure doable, and we know we can do it. We've done it before.
Well, and I think when you talk about our vision, we haven't sat down and gone through nuts and bolts, exactly what this class is going to look like. However, we both have the same vision as far as, these kids coming in, being able to be doing something hands-on rather than, like you say, sitting in front of a computer. Even with the IDLA course that we have planned out, we had Fridays planned where they're going to be going to your Perda building and seeing some things and
we can
having
still
guest speakers coming in and all those sorts of things. So I think as far as that goes, I think we're on the same page as far as what.
Well, this is really where it starts, to be really honest with you, is at that junior high level. I used to argue with Dr. Schmidt about that all the time because it's your kids, your students are the ones that are going to make that difference at the high school.
Right, and it's going to make a
introduction,
difference for these kids, to kind of get that vision of, okay, I'm not going to be a college student, but there's
I am going.
There's hope for me in high school that there's some hands-on things that I'm going to enjoy, and it's not going to be eternal drudgery until the 12th grade.
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, for me as a patron having students in the school district, this is a win-win for me and my children. Just in the simple fact, if Brandon, for example, would have been able to have done this the last year, or even the last 2 years, he would be going in as a freshman right now, and he would be taking welding and ag right now. Whereas as it sets now, he has to go into the wheel. He still has to go through introductory courses and try and figure out what he's going to do. And so that's just one side of it, aside from everything else we're talking about, the benefits. So for me, having a child in this district, I'm all for it, just for that reason alone. Does it create some headaches? Probably so, but that's something we're going to work through. And as far as the trust thing, guys, we need to move forward. It's time to just squash it, be done.
We agree.
Well, and I think there's going to be some, just as you said, Ron, there's going to be some areas that they're going to find that these two guys are going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out, even on the accountability and everything else, that's going to be then handed off. And moved up the chain, moved up the ladder. And I think, whatever PERDA can do to facilitate that and to make that and emphasize that the greatest experience, that's what we're here to do. And we do.
Madam Chair, if it's, and I totally agree. Let's pass, we're moving forward, and let's move forward and leave some balance if we can. And if the easiest way to do it is to have us reimburse the pay, absolutely. Let's get it out there, get it done. And then if the Department of CT says we're going to start funding it, but it has to be under the CTS school, then we can revisit that then. But right now we're so long in the tooth on this thing that, we need to get somebody hired within the next week. If they got to move, they got to get up here, they got to embrace the whole area and see what's happening. But it's almost too long as it is. But
Should we move ahead with it as part of the Emmett School District employee or not?
Madam Chair, we do have an action item to approve that position. I assume that.
Oh, is it action?
Later.
There's one later.
On.
And we have ours, so we do have an action item.
Oh. May I share something, Madam Chairman? So I had a discussion, a little bit bigger legislative picture with Senator Lent today, and he's on the Governor's Education Task Force. And they're looking at the Advanced Opportunities Program, if it's being used properly in different things. And of course, I'm pushing back and say, are you guys crazy? These kids are already going on. This is
phenomenal.
what the question should be, what can we do to improve access to the Advanced Opportunities Program? And I said, one thing would be very helpful is to have an exploratory CT wheel in the 8th grade. The other thing would be to have something like this, which, what do I do with it?
It's right here.
Oh, you've got it. You stole it.
I did.
So inside of that, thank you. It has some students. One of them is Caitlin Hall. And this kind of I put together. It shows how she used the Advanced Opportunities Program. And these are the classes she took at what time.
In high school.
In high school. This was a young man who graduated with an associate degree. Shows how he did it. It's an academic route. This young man right here is T. Gregory. He's a homeschooler, and he has a job because he took SolidWorks.
Yes.
At PERDA. That's how he got his job. Is
Yeah.
He found out that he could use that CNC machine, and he got hired at Ampec. Anyway, so this 8th grade exposure to CT is the direction we need to go, because then we just need to do it. So you two figure out which way you want to do it and we'll just do it. So I wanted to share that.
Madam Chair, you know, the one thing I want to put value on in this meeting is there's no egos on this table. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate having that be quite evident, because our patrons out there, they're all wondering, you know, this turf battle, it's over with.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Yes.
Madam Chair, I would love to speak with Cheryl a little bit, but I think if you really want to move this thing forward quickly, where we wouldn't have to question ADA and any of that, if you want, it would be best if it was our employee this year. I agree with the curriculum actually should be driven through you and then maybe make the adjustment. But that would be the cleanest, quickest way, in my opinion right now, is if we wanted to move forward, is make it the Emmett employee and reimburse that way, and then we come back.
Madam Chair, I totally wholeheartedly agree, because I lose a lot of sleep anyway, but I'm losing a lot of sleep over this because it's, like I said, it's long in the tooth. I know Rich is losing sleep over it, and we can get this thing put to bed. And that's the fastest way, I believe, and we can do it.
Get your person hired.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, well,
We'll redo that contract and memorandum of professional service agreement. With that in mind, it wouldn't have to be many changes.
Do you mind if I have just our lawyer just kind of put something at Amy? She's great with that too, so.
So you'll need to change who the employee is, a couple small changes, but other than that, it should be good.
Madam Chair and Superintendent Hood, I would suggest that Chris Jorgensen, our attorney, and Amy work together with you and Pat. If that's all right, I'd like to see the four of you work and then get back to your chairs.
Okay.
okay, moving on. Potential site of new high school and PERDA building.
Well, can I lead on that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeehaw.
So, I went down and talked to Brian Gregory.
Oh.
So, and he gave me what his plan was. You can look at it. I don't know which way. That must be the bottom. And basically, it's building a new high school over like a 10 or 15-year period on existing site. And so we're not going to make any decisions today, obviously, but I just want to throw out that PERDA is pretty close to building a building, but we need to have some idea if you're warm toward building, rebuilding at the current site and what that might look like. Because if we could build it there now, we could start right away, but we'd want to put it where it should be. And if we're going to go somewhere else, if that's, something that you think you should do, then that changes the dynamics considerably. So at some point, it would be helpful if you had a work session to weigh the pros and cons of should we build on the current site? If we did, what would it look like? Or should we build on a new site? And what are the pros and cons of that? And that's really all I,
Did you bring copies of that?
no, but Mr. Gregory would be more than happy to provide them if.
Please.
Yes.
Yes.
Please.
I'd like to. I remember when he presented that a couple of years ago or whenever.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive. Madam Chair,
He'd like to
Yes.
buy that too.
if I can interject,
I'm sorry.
one of the things that Emmett has, or not Emmett, but Boise has done is they've, for better use, I'll just say repurposed, they've repurposed their schools. For instance, when I back in the 80s, everybody wanted to tear down Boise High School. That was the big thing, especially the people on the north end. Oh, we're going to tear down Boise High. And what they ended up doing is refurbishing some of it. And then, in North Junior High is another example where the basketball and the football court was and all that. That's where they added on and built a new gymnasium and everything. And then gone over to the older part. And it's just kind of neat. And I'm thinking, why can't we repurpose what we've got?
You look at the price of land now.
And
They
if,
did that
Piece
with
of land that
Whittier.
you can have.
Yeah.
Give it to us.
if we did, what would it look like? Does it make sense? And we need to get the thought process going. So I just encourage you to have that discussion sometime.
I've even thought of, Madam Chairman, is that even if the high school was built at a different location and PERTA already had built a building here, it's not going to be wasted because if the junior high is there, there's classrooms that we could use immediately for junior high, while that high school is being, when it's junior high is being rebuilt like you're suggesting. If that's the case, that's the direction they want to go. We have had a proposal to us by the facilities committee of building this mega high school someplace on 65 acres. And I don't think the board's made a decision at all where we're going with that proposal. We were more focused on other issues. So I think it's still all, at least in my mind, still fluid. And something we consider anything that's what's best for our students and what's best for Emmett.
Madam Chair, I think from a patron standpoint, from what I'm hearing from patrons of this community, I think you would have a better chance of getting a bond pass to do that than a bond pass trying to buy 65 acres and build a new facility for $65 million.
And the areas that have 65 acres in our community that have services, appropriate zoning, and the infrastructure on the road system, that's there's a handful of parcels.
But sorry, Madam Chair, I also feel that I'm not of the same opinion as Mr. Gregory in that fact. I think if it's done, I think it needs to be done. I think they need to come in, whether it takes 2 years, but I don't want to see 15 years. If we pass a bond, you build on that site, you redo all your facilities from top to bottom, plus your additions, your sports fields, build a new gymnasium. But from a selling standpoint to our community, I think you're going to have a better chance of passing that than trying to build a Middleton or a Ridgeview or whatever the new one is going in Boise.
Stages.
Madam Chair, yeah, I think the main proposal to that is that there's an ability there to maintain class and session. And then also you eliminate one of the domes. And I was the first graduating class to go 4 year. We're all in there. I have pride in that school and in that campus, but unfortunately, to be frank, it's only gotten uglier on the exterior with the most recent roof job.
Wow.
And there, I don't know how we ever recover the aesthetics, but we're short on gymnasiums in this community. That plan calls for 2 gymnasiums, and you had to find land at this point in time. Obviously, it's going to have to be another discussion amongst this board and administration. But anyway, All options are in there.
Yeah.
I think outside of the box might be the call for today.
And I appreciate what Dieter has to say, because maybe there's some reason that we go ahead. It might take some time before anything happens anyway. So we appreciate any input you can give us as far as
I think it's a good plan.
how soon we should do it, where we should put it, what it might look like. We know what we'd like to put inside of it. And that, but the outside exterior and what that might look like.
Did anybody go on the tour for Ridgeview? I know Terry was there, but from has anybody, it's the new one in Valley View School District?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So back
Yeah.
behind the school is a separate building,
Right.
that's their CTN. The greenhouse is phenomenal, and so everything fits in that building.
It's that way with a couple of their high schools over there. It's separate. The
Mhm.
CTE building is separate.
Yes.
I guess bottom line is, we don't want to build something that's not gonna fit in to your plans. It just doesn't make any sense.
What I was concerned about is, as I sit on the facilities committee, I kept saying, we need to include PERDA, and I got nowhere with that request. So I think it's up to this board to take the bull by the horns and make some tough decisions in the not too distant future.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we do have 2 spots that we're looking at, correct?
I got the one that, right next.
So this is where you pointed.
This is the one that I came and approached the board a while back. Did kind of a Google.
Here's a,
Oh, there,
Right there.
yeah, there.
Yep.
Good.
Nice.
Thanks, Bob.
This is the other one is right across, this piece of property here is Teresa Pearson's property. And we're looking at trying to negotiate something with her at this time, but.
yeah, if school board would honor this one, they wouldn't have to buy land.
Right.
And it would be on school property. They could build a 2-story building that could go into a campus like this really easily.
Is this one over by the softball field?
Correct.
Yeah, it's a little,
Madam Chair, what happens to the softball fields and stuff? You gotta
Still there.
build in.
It's still there.
Yeah, it's
But
still
isn't that
there.
their parking? Is that where the softball,
That's-
is that where they park? I'm
Madam
just,
Chair,
I
that
think-
would be my question about that is what do you then do with the parking there for the softball field?
Well, that's where we need this forward-looking.
Mr. Madam Chairman.
And I think that the 65 acres was the recommendation from one of the, I don't want to call him a contractor or designer, that most high schools now are 60 to 65 acres. And I think we're currently, please don't quote me, 39. So we're quite a bit similar. So if we're going to expand building wise, you're going to start cutting into some other areas that we would need to look at. So.
And on this
Well, that-
particular plan, he's identified some places
Yeah.
that,
About 20 acres.
Has
they had
Mr.
to-
Carter seen this? or-
Have you seen this, Mr. Carter?
and in defense of Mr. Gregory, he's just trying to get the discussion started. He's not saying this is the best
Final
idea.
product, yeah.
If it is, he's pretty brilliant.
Dennis, his son-in-law.
He owns a
that's
local
actually-
print shop.
Okay.
He's running for city council.
High school parking lot.
Brian, this is first.
Facility.
I know you're talking.
Right next to it,
See,
doing it with the soccer field and everything else.
I mean, that would. Yeah, I don't.
It'd just be what you could negotiate.
I don't know, you'd have to call Mr. Carlson, but Tom Carlson told me at one time, that there was a lady that owned a bunch of that land, kind of that runs from there to the canal, and was at one time, was gonna try and leave that to the district. I don't know where that's at or where Mr. Carlson was the one that talked to me about that, kind of running, not on that side of the canal, but just back on this side from the soccer field going down to the, is that commercial? Commercial. The commercial canal
Mhm.
down there too, so. But I know that one of those homes they've just remodeled and completely redone it.
I saw it.
Yeah, they have students in the high school, so.
So Madam Chair, just food for thought, I still think it'd be cheaper, you go in and buy those 5 to 10 acre parcels. And I know we're getting spitballing here, but you go in and buy them for 500,000. you're still gonna get that bought a heck of a lot cheaper than going and buying 65 acres from somebody and starting from scratch.
For sure. All the utilities included.
And that's another thing. You're gonna have water, sewer, gas. You're gonna have, Mr. Goff's already got his wire pulled, so we can just hook up to it. Use the internet. So.
That's you.
Well, I wasn't planning on having real in-depth discussion because you probably want to go into executive session if you want to get real specific about what you're going to do.
Well, if we're gonna do this and do it right, we're gonna have to research and study and, we took a training last week where the safety guy he wanted to line up architects with make sure they had the safety.
He was
That,
pretty
and I
adamant
thought,
about
I
that.
never thought about that. So there's all kinds of things.
You know, what would be nice, Madam Chair, is to, now that we've got the issue of the superintendent behind us, is look at this in a timeframe fashion like we did with the superintendent. And looking forward, say, we could have A done in this timeframe and B and C and get to an ultimate decision instead of letting it be willy-nilly down the road. Because I think the patrons of this community have really starting to learn to trust us because we're a body of people now with a get her done attitude. And I think that might be a thought that we can move forward with.
Anybody else?
Madam Chair, I got to be excused for a minute to make a phone call. My employee tried calling me and she's new, and so if I could be excused to make that phone call, and I'll come back in and reconvene when you got. Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay,
you can
thank
be
you.
excused.
Madam Chair.
I'm not used to this position. Obviously. Yes, Susan, sorry.
I was going to say, if you need somebody to do some dirty work, you now have somebody you can appoint to do it. They're out of the room.
Oh. Jefferson, you get to
Had it done before.
Madam Chair, I just have one question. Does anyone know if the facilities committee has any future meetings planned? Because this might be something for them to take and review and discuss, especially in light of Mr. Jones' comments that the CT classes have not been explored with them, so.
Madam Chair, I know as far as we're,
she's on vacation.
Yeah, but just before she left to go on vacation, she had posted something on the Gmail account saying that they were gonna get back together and
No, it was
start pestering us again.
So if that might be something for your board to take to the facilities committee and just update them as to the presentation today that Mr. Thane made.
Madam Chair, the other point there, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we're under the gun kind of with one of the, with the property situation, whether or not we're going to purchase that property. And that isn't to push the school, Emmett School District, but it would be nice if we had a little clearer vision.
I don't think we're going to wait for the Emmett School District to make a decision.
Right.
We'll probably move ahead, kind of hoping it fits.
So, do you still have that bomb?
Where's the other one?
You're talking about the land at, what's her name now, Teresa's?
So, it's not gonna show it on that one, so you're talking about.
It's all
that other map.
Madam Chair, I think still the bottom line is I don't think the building, if they eventually built a building, that it could be wasted. And it might be down the road if the school district does move the middle school over there, that they purchase that building, and when they build a new high school, they'll be building per that building instead of one they've got now. It could be a trade. So.
And it would be conducive to be able to do it right on Emmett's property, because then we wouldn't have to pay the expense of buying real estate.
Spot here would be
That
good.
being said.
I'll look into it.
It's just
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, potential legislation for early childhood education.
That's me.
Again,
So, early childhood education is kind of an interesting concept. We've got 50% or maybe a little bit more of our kids in the state of Idaho coming to kindergarten, really not ready to thrive in kindergarten. Kind of shaking head, yeah. And it's an issue that affects, the kids and the expense to the district. And anyway, it's something that we need to address. My concern, however, has been some of the efforts in the past have been crafted so parents could do less. And we try to build, I call it the capacity of the institution, rather than the capacity of parents to help us out. Because those kids go back home at the end of each day. And if you don't bring the parents along at the same time, I went to one conference in Nebraska and they called it the 2-generation strategy. I felt like that was a lot more appropriate. You might wonder why I'm bringing this up. I guess I should explain that a little bit. One, it's an issue of the Emmett School District side because you've got kiddos coming to school that are making it hard to reach your K-3 literacy goals. There are just some problems that way. On our side, we've got Eileen Daniels that teaches some early childhood education things. It could impact us both. But one reason I'm bringing it up is a little selfish reason is some of the ideas that I've taken to the state, and we've actually gotten implemented statewide. I tried to get started in Emmett School District in the past, and for a variety of reasons, it didn't happen. And I think something statewide like this is going to happen. The governor put in $13 million more this year. The legislature agreed with it for K-3 literacy. The problem I had with it, I voted for the bill, but the problem I had with it, we didn't have any comprehensive plan on what we should do. And I don't think this kindergarten readiness issue is really a school district responsibility, at least not solely. I look at it more, you have the expertise of what kids need to be able to do to get to school, but it's really not the school district's job to reach down to third and 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds to make it happen down there. I really don't want to expand your responsibilities that much. What I'd like to do is create a cultural expectation in this community and eventually in the state that parents can do some things to help their kids prepare for school. And, there's a lot of young people now that have grown up without siblings, or maybe they don't have cousins, or they don't have much exposure to young people. It's not like when many of us were growing up where we had extended family. Maybe Terry, you didn't, I don't know, but.
Oh, wait a minute. I was born before the war. My brother was born after the war, so
Okay.
there's a great divide.
But there's less exposure that a lot of young people have to even know what a young child acts like. And I think we want to medicate a lot of young boys just because they're young boys, and
are you pointing to me? I was like totally tuned out.
I think we need to get you.
You can say that all you want. Wow.
But that being the case, so what are some of the opportunities? So what I've suggested to some people, suggested the governor's education guy, is this education continuum. So on one side, we've got some resources in the community. And the most expensive one is Head Start. It's about $10,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Per
federal
child?
per child.
Yeah.
To teach them to use a toothbrush and wipe their nose?
Well, they do more than that. In defense of Head Start,
Okay.
they also do health things. They They work with parents. I mean, it's a fairly intensive program, but it's very expensive. There's about 4,500 kids throughout the state of Idaho participating. If you look at it, there's somewhere between 20 and 25,000 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds. You know, there's about 25,000 kids in each cohort. So that's about not quite 20% of the kids can go to Head Start.
Right.
Well, that's very expensive. There are other options. There's parents as teachers. There's like Mississippi has a community. I kind of like what they do. The state provides matching funds, and the community kicks in some money, and they create the early childhood education structure the way they would like it to be. It might be it might be daycare, you know, academic daycare in churches or you know, commercial daycares or whatever the community decides to come up with. You've got Upstart, which is used in Utah, which costs about $800 a child. I think it could cost less so you've got this continuum of costs. But we have an issue that I think we need to address, and it would be nice to address this issue in a way that engaged the parents. So if it was a community-driven approach to early childhood education. So I guess basically, the bill I'm thinking about introducing, get to the sort of what I'm nuts and bolts of what I'm thinking about doing. And when I talk about this, I really don't know what the Emmett School District is doing, you know, as far as all-day kindergarten, early childhood or summer, or, you know, so it's not like I know what you're doing. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but if we could create some interest in this issue and get parents more involved, it would be very beneficial. So one thing I've suggested, we have throughout the state, when we have kindergarten registration, every school district has some screener. It's not a standardized screener, but I think you could have some standardized elements of that screener to find out where the high need areas are within the state. And what I would do, because we were basically already doing it, just have to tweak that a little bit. Then to get some buzz going, I'd offer a $100 gift certificate for parents who brought their kids to school ready to learn. Now, why would you do that? The reason you'd do it is because you'd unleash the motherhood network. Mothers would start talking about, well, what does a kid need to know in order when they go to school? Too many young people, I mean, there's a lot of great parents, but we're talking about half of them that either don't know what to do or they have different reasons why they can't do it. And this isn't about assigning blame. It's just about what we can do to bring more resources to this without spending a lot of money. If you can get mothers talking and parents talking about what their student needs to know and do before they come to school, you start engaging the parents. It makes it easier for school personnel like kindergarten teachers to reach down, even Head Start teachers or daycare, to visit with parents, because they're asking, what does my child need to do? What can I do at home? And then after that initial step of taking the screener and then offering this minimal, I know what a lot of people are going to say. They're going to say, well, you shouldn't pay parents for doing what they should be doing. And I'm saying, well, we're willing to spend $10,000 a child for parents who aren't doing what they should be doing to pay a non-parent. We won't give a $50 or $100 gift certificate to parents to just say thank you, you know, and to indicate how important they are. That's really one of the things that in my discussions with a lot of young folks in early childhood education discussions, they don't feel like that they're qualified. And there's so many things that parents do, vocabulary is the currency of education. And just talking to kids, doing things with them, washing dishes. Anyway, just bring some interest to this. And that's what the $100 gift certificate would do. That would cost the state about $2.2 million. And the governor last year increased the K-3 literacy budget $13 million. So we're not blinking an eye. Nobody thinks anything about that. But if we try to build the capacity of parents, we're like, oh, we can't do that. Why not? So that's kind of what I'm thinking about bringing up in the legislature this next year. But if you're interested in pursuing what we could do as a community, if you have some people who would like to visit with me, one, I need to know what the Emmett School District's doing. Two, I need to know who else in the community is interested and see if we can't create something that has unique, Gem County components, because we're unique, we're different than Payette or Boise here. We don't have many refugees. There's just different criteria. So it's just an open discussion or an open invitation to have people contact me if they're interested.
Chairman Dan.
Yeah.
Our name that comes to mind to me is Becky Brown, Becky Poston, and she spoke at the educational forum with the chamber, and she
Smart Start?
she took over, yeah, and she worked with them at school district.
Can you give me contact?
Yeah, I'll dig that up if anybody has it ready, but yeah, we'll get that over.
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Sure, Steve, my hat goes off to you for this reason. I just read the accreditation report. In that report, there's a survey of parents in the community. And that survey was about this many parents. There should have been that many. And your idea may bring about an interest that parents will have in the child's education and carry that from the 3-4-year-olds on through high school. Because we desperately, if that snapshot is really real, then we got to do something to get these parents more involved with their kids' education.
I think it's the least expensive thing we can do to get the biggest amount.
$100 isn't going to do it. 10 times that we'll get their attention.
That's not the issue. The issue is the advertising. It's the discussion. Has nothing to do with the money.
Yeah, you get them talking about.
You get them talking.
Absolutely.
You'd have people on Facebook.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the money. You're not paying parents to do anything. But if someone said, did you get your $100? Did your child? No, or whatever. Then they start talking. It's the discussion that's important. That's what you're paying for. You're not paying for parental action. You're paying for the discussion.
I'm saying that the interest, what you're saying, I'm not sure $100 will do it, but I think a different number will bring about that interest. And, gee, you got $250 for doing what?
No, I think 50 would be enough.
I'd like to mention something. We have a resource in this community. There's a Retired Teachers Association. There's 150 retired teachers, still very competent, that could do a train the train with the parents.
Like parents as teachers.
Absolutely. And they would donate their time. I don't think you'd have to pay them to do that. They sit there at the table talking about scholarships for the high school and the junior high and any place they try to help. And that resource is sitting there. We don't use them. And I think that's just all retired teachers still have that drive to want to share their knowledge. And what better than to work with a parent on what they need to know to teach their students.
Well, and there's some things the Emmett School District could do also. As you have this spring screener and some kids are struggling and others aren't. Maybe you'd want to consider a summer kindergarten for some of these kids to get them caught up before school starts. I mean, there's all sorts of options.
There it is.
But we're not talking about it. We need to. It's an issue.
Any other comments, Mr. Thane?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
I should tell you, this is a little ironic. The reason I ran for office originally. Should I tell him, Susan?
Oh, my God.
No, I don't know.
Go ahead and tell them. This is very interesting.
We started milking cows.
No, wait till you hear this. This is a
No, I
complete.
ran for office to kill pre-K
Yes.
because the version of pre-K at that time cut the parents out. I was never opposed to early childhood education, but that version of pre-K I've always been opposed to, I still am.
Oh, they picketed him. I mean, it was unreal because he was the worst thing that came down the pike. He was against kindergarten
Oh, boy.
and
Oh, wow.
preschool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
it was really
not
bad.
really, but it does make for good sound bites.
I know, isn't that funny? Yeah, it's a complete 180.
Yeah.
Well, Chairman Thane, thank you for bringing that up because that, interestingly enough, and it was when I was still with the Boise District, they implemented what they called Just for Kids. And I'll never forget that. They brought in these relocatables behind, there were like 5 or 6 different schools. Boise does have, believe it or not, has like the Bora area, very low income. I mean, one of the highest, as I remember, free lunch things. And it's that whole Bora area. But also at one time, it's where it's over by Hillside School. That was really a low income area and stuff too. So they brought in these relocatables and they started what they called Just for Kids. And it was Dr. Coverly that was the one that was really behind it. And I'll never forget because they'd come out and say, you need to go out and you put in the technology for this new classroom and stuff like that. And it was manned by parents. And but what it ended up being, I don't know what they call it now today, but it's been so successful. We're talking 15 years ago. It's very, very successful. And I know that it also, when you do something like that, it involves your special ed people too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's services that you just have to kind of take on too, and the free lunch thing and all that. But man, it's been successful, and it has raised the interest level for these students and these parents. So it's a cost. It's a cost.
You pay for it one way or the other.
Yeah, it is.
That's what
Yeah.
you can take this down and make
Yeah, it's like-
instead of lives.
Okay, moving on. Thank you, Mr. Thane.
Thank you.
Okay, we have approval or denial of middle school teacher CTE agreement.
Madam Chair, are we moving into open session now where Curtis wants to stay with us or do they want to disembark?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
asking a question.
You can stay or you can hang out and
Stay as a patron.
you can sit in the seats.
We'll sit in the seats.
Also, we need to set up a next, joint
Oh,
meeting.
right.
Oh,
date.
yeah, that wasn't on the thing.
Thank you
Was
so
it
much.
every 3 months, 4 months, 3 months?
Quarterly, 3 months.
August,
Every
October.
Yeah, quarterly.
When
So
does
don't
legislature start?
January.
That's right.
Well, he's got half a year left yet.
You need a part-time guy.
Who wants paid for that?
I was gonna steal.
I'm gonna be gone after about the 18th of October. Be gone for a couple weeks.
Yeah, they're fine.
So it'd be October, what are you looking at?
Hay season's over with. I don't care.
So if
We usually, we usually do it on a Thursday, or Friday.
We've done both.
That'd be the 24th if we went with that.
and I might not be there, but okay.
But when were you leaving, Steve?
15.
I think I'm leaving somewhere around the 20th or 21st.
So maybe do it the week
The
before.
17th.
Would the 17th work?
I think so.
So
17th
the
is okay for me.
17th, 4
What,
p.m.
October?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll remind you, Terry.
Thank you.
Ronnie, does that work?
I don't know, that's far out.
What day did you say?
17th?
17th October.
Fine with me. My
how I
own,
feel
take
about
the
it.
25th, so,
Of October.
yeah, the 25th
I can't for 4 p.m. again.
There you go. There's my calendar.
Terry, is that?
17th it is.
So October 17th, 4 p.m.
That week I.
I love it.
He's busy Friday.
14th. Okay.
14th is.
He can't on the Thursday, on the 17th,
October?
because it's a JV game.
On Thursday?
It'll be like 5 o'clock.
I'll be here all morning.
I will be gone that whole week.
So anytime you can.
17th it is.
I will be gone.
'Cause I don't know where
Okay.
your office is.
You're
over there.
gone?
I'll go over there sometime.
And if you want to do it earlier, or
We don't have any running water.
Sorry.
Let's do it.
Jefferson, are you available October 17th? The
main
Teeter?
I didn't know you had drive.
Michelle, or is that available?
Yeah, come hang out with
For
us.
which, now what?
17th?
Oh, we're still on the 17th.
October 17th.
It looks like you've been around water.
Let's do the 17th.
4 p.m. Are we doing here?
Let's, go to the ag building.
Ag building?
Is it got air conditioning?
It should be nice and cool then.
It's a lot easier to live
And to
stream
fit-
down here.
That'll
It is.
Oh, that's right. That's a good point.
Mr.
I like that. What time does the football game
Office,
start?
it's easier here.
It sounds live streaming.
I'm not the board, so don't ask me.
So if the football game starts at 5-ish,
We don't care. It's fine. We can miss the freshman game.
Where's it at? Where's the game at? Is it here? Is it away? Is it home?
well, if it's a home,
17th it is.
I was gonna say if it's a home game,
Let's just do
it
it.
makes sense to do it over at Perta because you're a football field, so.
It's fine.
There's no
I-
bathroom, there's.
We
it's
suck
easier
it
to
up.
live
They can
stream
suck it up.
here.
At the ag building, there is.
If it was Riley's game, I'd be worried about it, but I'm really.
Okay.
the games are really-
Okay.
Okay.
Just a short one.
I imagine it'll start at 5.
All right, 4 PM.
Oh, for the meeting?
Yeah, 4 PM, October 17th, and we'll just have it here at the district office. Okay, and why don't we take a recess for 5 minutes, and then we'll continue in our open session.
Thank you.
So we're gonna say for the purposes of this part, 5:52.
He's over there. Big guy.
5:52. Yep, I got 5:52 as well.
Put the chairs
You're on that.
OCD's
a little bit,
kicking in.
a little bit.
Your mother.
Only a little bit though, Ronnie.
That's my, that's it.
how you doing?
We just barely got
Time to make pie, huh, Pat?
Someday, they hired us.
I know someone who's gonna have one of those.
You don't have my address.
Is that your holiday out there?
No, I didn't write it today. I'll write it.
What's that?
You don't have my address.
I saw that. the
It'd
other
be
day.
very hard to find in Letha.
Extremely.
Did you see my wife's?
I miss that little store.
I don't. Okay.
It's cute,
My wife.
So do I, but I want to soda.
1916.
cute little thing.
Well,
So she's been.
So what are they gonna say about it? What are they gonna say?
And I asked the guys when I knew just find
Creative.
another. I don't care where it is.
So for it to create that,
Yeah, like
you have,
it's
you had the bed for it to out like that. When it's
Guys,
normal,
it
it's
was in his
not.
yard. But it was also-
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I know
So
where-
power strip into a power not vent, and they have that bar on it right there. It'll do it. Knew it. It had to be bent in order to show that.
And I- she goes through.
Is she injured? Is anybody injured?
Random broken hand.
But for her, she loved it.
Hello.
We just barely.
Hi, I'm Jody. Yeah.
Finally, I see your name.
Nice to meet you. This is,
You are.
Oh, Ronnie Weeks, trustee Weeks.
yes. So,
It's all good.
So, the mystery is solved with, I went back and found her email. They never sent us an invoice. I sent
can I set this in the agenda?
I'm thinking that now they're gonna invoice this.
based on who was there. Because it was-
I
But I sent 3 emails requesting them. I told you. Oh, she did. Oh, I also. There's a register. There's a problem. Yes. He's doing nice.
So.
You just signed with that. Yes, yes. You just signed with that.
Right.
Don't sign with that. And then I have to say this.
Bye.
That was the good one, this was the small one.
Do those pants come in my size?
Well,
Better go get you some
get anything for a price, Jefferson.
I didn't know. Heather's taking good care of us. Oh, better not ruin that then. Go home and eat healthy and full belly. Jefferson is a cookie.
Ever since I got on this board, I've just gone, oh I thought you were gonna need a baba and a binky down there.
Oh, I got.
You got tired, right?
So Steve said. And I knew what I said. So he did you look So it's just that it's the total amount. It's just
Like a regional.
Good, everybody else got food out so that we won't bring us back to eat myself.
No.
That's what everybody keeps saying. A whole lot.
We get this.
You? We do.
But now we're starting.
So, your new friend, Jim Fowley, Superintendent in McCall,
Oh, yeah.
said to say hi.
Oh, well, God, I was just thrilled to have some time sitting next to him during that training. And I have some contacts at the Rotary Club up there. And I told him I got to come up there.
I thought.
This.
But I thought it was just.
Expecting,
Yeah, we were.
don't let it down.
Start up.
This.
Thank you so much.
I was on a phone with him yesterday. We were talking about some credit.
Touch the snowflake generation, how much all worked out. Oh, hi out there. Didn't see you at the game last night.
I got busy. I'm going on a trip tomorrow.
Thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna try to go up there.
Pretty good. Yeah.
They got that big boat thing up there. My son was up there.
No.
Boat taking a long weekend.
You got HDMI.
So I got Sunday and
Georgia.
stay over till Monday someplace.
Cornhole.
Hopefully things will quiet
Oh, yeah.
down. and everybody will go home.
Yeah.
I didn't ask, I meant to ask. How's your dog?
Oh, that's good.
I grew up with a friend.
Diabetic.
Might not gonna make it.
Pretty red. My dad had a whole stand.
Cause that would have been about $300
My boy's got a 24-foot
because of the vials of insulin.
family boat, you know, and
Oh,
Value.
15 people on board it, and they go out,
$60
pull the
every 10 days.
pontoons behind it,
Oh.
whatever, and play with it. Got a big family. He lives real close to
And then her-
Arrow Rock up there.
And then her already, she's on Apoquel for
Leaves,
allergies.
you know, the
That's
water up there.
$60. So we're up to $300.
Go ahead and do that for yourself.
Yeah, it's a good place to go when it's 100 degrees.
Oh, boy.
For 3 months. I gotta do more than that. That didn't happen.
You might try that.
She just has a bladder infection.
That one might be better.
She'll be better.
It wouldn't be gone.
I just don't like when the tables get right.
Oh, I see. There's no hydraulics.
What kind of dog?
Want to try this one?
Well, no, I'm fine.
Spanish, English?
Might be worse.
They're so ugly, they're cute.
Adorable.
No, we're gonna start,
Great, how are you doing?
We'll have anything to vote on.
We do.
I thought we were gonna.
We have an action item for the CTE agreement
We
for,
don't have an agreement.
no, well, we were talking about.
Didn't we just
are we-
agree that we would hire,
The concept.
How are you?
be
It's
the
been a busy
employer,
day.
and they would compensate
I
the
know.
orders.
You don't have to make an action. You guys can table it too.
Pardon?
You guys don't have to make an action.
Sorry.
So that
I
is.
thought it's something that has to happen right away.
I thought it was supposed to, we agreed that it would be our employee,
I'll go grab it.
so that's why.
It's sitting actually on the back counter.
Did we didn't decide on
Your
that?
office?
Yeah,
I am
they
moving
did.
it in.
Did
Other than over there.
Because Pat wants the ball going,
We want to
Yeah, you
move
gotta hire
forward.
this person this week.
and it'd be cleaner, and then the next year they can.
Probably gonna have to table the contract
I think we can discuss
until it's finalized.
Suggestion, table
Well,
it
I'm sorry,
until it's
Rose.
finalized.
I would table.
Okay.
Because, I mean, if you guys are okay, with the or actually, you can give me direction. Work with
The result.
and come up with a plan as far as for the employers. I think we're in agreement that we want to be the employer, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so I think we take. So that.
Can we make a motion to table? We just say we table.
Yeah. I would make a motion. No action. On the ground.
Okay.
Just I can give them authority to proceed.
You've already given me authority right now.
Okay.
To meet with him, because it really, I can't go into anything binding without your approval anyway, so we're just kind of, we're gonna actually do the work, bring back to you.
I just want to get the teacher hired and move forward.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be, we'll be back in August. And he should be hired. by
And
then.
I can't look and go, oh, I can't.
Did we approve
You
the
could-
hire?
So what you're, so I
Hire
think I
subject to our
now,
approval.
so what, well, I can hire pending your approval, and that's exactly it. So that's how I would probably do it, is you're just giving, you're giving me permission to move forward with the hiring of a middle school. That would be and
Okay.
pending your approval at the board meeting.
Oh, so do we have to have that in a motion this time? I want to make it clear that we're gonna proceed with that.
Let me think, because let me see what you have as an action.
It says approval or denial of middle school teacher CTE agreement,
See, that's not anything we're doing. You're tabling that.
Okay.
right?
And so the rest of it is just, well, you can, you're gonna table this. I need board direction or give me approval to.
And that'd be a selling point.
Or bring back to our next meeting the hire. Does that make sense? You're exactly right, the hire. I gotta think how to word it though. You know what I'm trying to get across?
I do know what you're trying to get across, but it's not a motion we can make.
I'm already at 3 years. How can I get out of the motion? You don't have it down as an action.
No.
So you can't. Do not do it.
That's, yeah.
So we just have to table it,
Table it.
and then you guys work it out and come back.
Yep, yeah, because I don't.
We'll approve
Cameras
Right,
right.
trust us, we're going to do it.
retroactively.
Make sure I look the other way.
Yeah, I would table it and then this, I'll move forward. I know the direction.
Okay, I agree with that.
Okay. Jefferson, you ready? Okay, we are we're starting open session. Approval or denial of middle school teacher CTE agreement. You need to make a motion to table this topic.
Table it. You don't have to motion, you just table it.
Just table it? Okay.
So we had to make a motion.
No.
You don't have to make a motion for anything that's an action item.
Okay.
Say that again, please, Heather.
You're not required to make an action on an action item, so you don't have to do a motion if you don't feel like there's one for that particular thing. You just say, we'll table it and make the motion next time.
Because it's already an action item.
Not something you vote on?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on then. We already approved the superintendent contract at the beginning of the meeting, so now we have the superintendent report.
I have a PowerPoint presentation, Ken. I don't know how to turn it on. Sorry, my first time. It's a very short report. I just wanted to throw a couple things out there. Coach Haggett, is that right? Target, I am so sorry. Coach Target sent me some images. They went down to the fairgrounds and did some painting, as they're in the middle of their football camp. And I just thought it was great, these images. So I wanted to make sure you're aware of some of the things that's going on in our community with our football players. And then also there's 2 senior projects that I'm aware of. And I just wanted to throw them out there. One of them is there's a July 26th, there is a golf tournament for, it's a 2-person scramble here at the Emmett Golf Course. And it's part of a senior project for Cade Eaton.
Yes.
And then the second one is Hunter Brown is going to be doing a cleanup on the 27th from 8 to 1 on little freeze outs. So if you know anybody that wants to be involved in those things, I'm going to try to make it especially to the little freeze out. I would go to the golf match, but I'm not the greatest at it. So, but I just thought it was kind of neat. I mean, I'm starting to get these images from the community and I think it's great. And I want to make sure that the board's aware of all the things going on in our community. I know there's quite a few more senior projects out there. These are just the 2 that I'm aware of. And as I get them, I'll send them your direction. And then I wanted to make sure when we met and discussed my contract, there was a couple dates that I wanted to make sure the board was completely aware of. I was not going to be available if at all possible because I'd already had prior arrangements. August 7th, I'll be here in the morning, and then I have a trip planned the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then I'll take those as personal days and or vacation days within that. And then my wife and I have a trip planned August 25th through the 1st. It's her 51st birthday, and so we're headed to Cabo if that's at all possible. But I'll bring that to our August board meeting because it's over 5 days, and it's required that we have board approval. But I'm hoping that you'll allow me to do that because I've already bought plane tickets. So, other than that, everything that I've been involved with so far here, I've been in and out all week. It's been amazing. I'm honored to be here, and I'm here to serve this community and this district. So, if there's any questions or comments, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to give a shout out to Tenny Conka on a senior project also that I attended over at City Park. She's in a ukulele group with me this summer, and so I got kind of close to her and her sister. And they were raising money for a Make-A-Wish. Their goal was $1,000. They raised over $2,000.
Wow.
It was just fantastic. Had a nice concert there. They brought in an old rock group that I danced to in high school. They were at the Emerald Ballroom in Boise. They used to be part of the Chancellors. They had different name, Rocketeers or something like that. But anyway, they played for free, gratis for us old people. And it was just a great evening to bring the community together at the band shell.
Mr. Carter?
I would say if you haven't been involved much with senior projects, please get involved. You will be amazed at what these kids do. He had a picture. One of our students just completed an entryway for the football team, did a brick entryway and cement work for where the team comes on the field. And then you can kind of see that it's not real.
I'll get it up here.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It was pretty small.
This big E was done by a patron. for us, and it's beautiful. And I thought, man, that would look nice in the front of the B Dome for athletics coming in. So I called and said,
Make two.
how much?
Was that Mr. Poole?
Oh, yeah. And he, 7,000.
Oh, God.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It looks beautiful.
And she told me he won't build another one for free.
Well, and I didn't expect him to. When I talked to him, I was hoping that we could do something. But when he said 7,000, I thought, that's a little bit.
Made out of steel or wood?
It's a combination of that and like bed liner.
It's made out of the same material they said as bed liners, and it weighs.
You might talk to the
1,200 pounds.
CTE people.
Oh, my God.
So.
But that's really improved that where the teams enter and that work and the brickwork there and yeah. So like I said, if you get an opportunity to be involved with senior projects, it's an amazing. We have a young man that's finishing up the trophy cases. We've got a bunch of other great projects from the Make-A-Wish Foundations and those types of things, service back to the community and stuff. But yeah, our football team went out and painted the fairgrounds, and I wish I could remember who talked to me about it, but he said, appreciate all they did, a little rough around the edges in a couple spots. Said, I think there might be more paint on the boys than there was on the buildings, but no, I appreciate the hard work that they went out and they did. So last night we had kind of a jamboree type game with a team out of down by Las Vegas that came up and has spent 3 days with us, and had a lot of the community there. It was a great time. So I think I saw Bob there, and I know Ron was there.
Boulder City?
Boulder City.
Yeah. Madam's Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Carter, I have a question. When a letterman or letterwoman gets a e-letter nowadays, is it the traditional block letter or is it the new font like that?
We will eventually probably go to the new letter, but letters are expensive.
Yeah.
And so until we're run out of those, it's the block.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and those are getting harder and harder to find too. So our company that we used out of Boise has gone out of business now, so we have to order from quite a ways.
So, Madam Chair, I'd also like to recognize Faye Welling too. She actually left the country to do her senior project. El Salvador. And it's a pretty neat deal. She went down there and was helping out young women, all women, and with needs. And it was pretty special senior project. And I think she really epitomizes thinking outside the box. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, if I can chime in on that, Faye Welling is actually involved in a program called Days for Girls. And this is actually our third senior who's taken over the program, and they travel to a third world country and educate and provide resources to young ladies who don't have access to feminine hygiene products and what they can do in those circumstances to gain access to that. It's a really cool program. A lot of young women in the community get together to make reusable feminine hygiene products, and they sew them themselves, iron them out, package them up, and then they pack them all up in a suitcase and take them to third world countries to provide them to young ladies and provide education and information to them. So Faye's actually our third senior to be involved with that process.
Pretty cool.
The one other thing I wanted to share, and I walked out without her name, and I apologize. One of the counselors from Lewis and Clark College contacted me this week and just wanted to tell me that she had a student register with her from Emmett that had 30 college dual credits. And she called to compliment that she has never had a student that has 30 dual credits from any school register up there with them. And so she just said that was amazing, and she called and wanted to let me know that. So I thought that was pretty spectacular.
Was that almost a year's worth?
That's a year's worth. Yeah. A full-time student is considered 12, but to get done in 4 years, you gotta be 15 or more. So it's about a full year.
15 units was pretty much a semester you're loading. Yep.
Very nice. Okay. Now we're moving on to the high school advanced ed report.
So
If I can, Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce Dale Kleiner. Dale is the Regional Manager for Advanced Ed over the Idaho region. And he has offered to come out tonight and visit with the board a little bit. Former superintendent, 37 years in education, and has been with Advanced Ed as long as I can remember, having to do accreditations, reviews and stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to him for a few minutes and let him visit with you, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Wade. Madam Chair, members of the board, it's a privilege to be here in front of you this evening. Mr. Carter mentioned a little bit about what I do and how I've done it and how long I've done it. You could almost call me an Idaho native, but since I came to work for Advanced Ed, I do facilitations, help organize reviews, and I'm a facilitator. I'm a retired superintendent. And why am I doing this, you might ask? Well, my wife said you can retire as long as you have something else lined up. So here I sit. I grew up on a family farm in northern Montana, and in about 2 weeks, the only place you're going to be able to find me is on a combine harvesting malting barley. My dad served on a local school board for years and years, and so I'm very well aware of the trials and tribulations that you face as a board. Sometimes it's a thankless job, but if I could just take a moment of personal privilege and congratulate you on your new superintendent hire. I know Craig very well from Notice. Craig has been involved in the accreditation process, multiple reviews, and I consider him a respected colleague, and he is that in the state also. So congratulations on your new hire. It was a great deal. So what am I doing sitting here? Just a farm boy. I want to talk just a little bit about the accreditation process. It is a continuous improvement process. It is not a gotcha process. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how things changed this year. But our job really is to facilitate an authentic and collaborative improvement process from all the way from the governing body all the way down to the classroom. And so the tools are research-based. We have about 32,000 member institutions around the world. And every 5 years, 20% of those has on-site reviews. So if you think about 6,000 reviews per year, that's a lot. It includes an on-site visit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the recommendations and the reflection that has gone on in the district, especially at Emmett High School, since the review took place. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the change in the process, how we got here, why we're where we're at right now in that process. And then after I get done, I'm going to turn it back over to Wade, and I'm going to hang around, be here for questions, any kind of conversation that you'd like to have while I'm still here. So first of all, I really want to recognize and I want to congratulate Mr. Carter and the Emmett High School staff for their immediate attention to the on-site review and those draft recommendations. They were one of the first schools that went through a brand new process. They were held themselves accountable and prior to and right after the review. And in fact, Wade called me immediately after the review, after they got their recommendations and that first draft document. And I was driving through Alabama. I was down there for a review at the time, and Wade said, "Okay, what's our next step? We need to file a response to the review." And I said, "You bet you do." And so he immediately got the department heads together, and you have some documentation that shows what they've done since then, and they've put some plans into place, and they asked for additional support in the form of facilitation, and that's why I'm here. And I'm going to hang in there with them and the district for as long as it takes for that second review opportunity. And The district, the high school, as I said, provided additional response evidence, and they identified some opportunities. And no matter what happens when a peer group comes in to do a review, whether it's a new process or not, there are opportunities to learn from and to hold yourselves accountable. And that's what the school has done since then. I'm really proud of them. Some of the strengths that were observed by that team included a very supportive learning environment. And I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know. You know, Emmett High School is an excellent school. I know that as well. And that was found out through the interviews that took place during the review, the observations that happened in classrooms. They observed almost every classroom for at least 20 minutes each to get a snapshot look at what happens in the day of life of a student at Emmett High School. They found reasonable class sizes. Thank you for that. That comes directly from you. They found highly engaged students and well-managed classrooms. They found a highly engaged principal who communicates frequently with parents, especially with those students who are struggling. They found passionate teachers who were observed individualizing instruction, forming and making sure that collaborative groups were in place, and strong student-teacher relationships. And you saw some of that up here on the good news tonight from the senior projects and so on. There's a very, very strong RTI process. The RTI process is called response to intervention, and that's the process that monitors students who need additional assistance and may have a disability. And so that progress monitoring helps to identify the specific disability and be able to monitor that student to help them improve and succeed in a school setting. And so I bring that out, that response to intervention, the RTI process, because a lot of high schools do not have a strong RTI process. It's difficult at the high school level. Elementary's not so bad, but high school is much more difficult, and the team congratulated the school for that and for the other strengths that I noted. From those review recommendations, like I said, the department heads put a response together, but they also were very careful to think about, okay, what can we learn from this thing? How can we take what the team recommended, and it was a good team, a well-respected superintendent from the area and a couple of principals and other folks who are respected in Region 3. And they said, okay, how can we use this information to help ourselves improve? And so they came up with 5 areas of opportunity that really align closely with the review recommendations. And it's going to help them move forward whether or not they have another review. To have another review is an excellent opportunity for them to say, okay, how are we doing now that we put this stuff in place? And so they are at the outset of the plans to do some more school improvement planning. That's the first one. School improvement planning is different in every school that we go into, and it depends on the relationship of the school to the district leadership. And in the Emmett School District, the school improvement plan is aligned with the pillars, and you're familiar with the pillars. The pillars are those strategic planning objectives, strategies that the district developed that they report on each year to the State Department of Education. The school improvement plan can be written on the back of a napkin. And so the school has taken those pillars and they've begun using them, especially with RTI planning. And now they're going to expand that. They're going to talk about it a little bit more into each classroom. Those actions to implement that plan are especially important. And so that'll be a part. Parental involvement is the second one. And that one is terrifically difficult in most high schools in the country. It's tough when even we do a survey to get 20% of parents to respond because they're busy people. High school kids are more independent. They may not want their parent involved with their education by that time. Leave me alone, I'm doing fine. But at the same time, parental involvement is important. That collaboration, not just with the students and with teachers, but also with the community. And I see it up there on the screen that there's lots of parental involvement in activities that kids are doing. Let's take it that next step into the actual academics and achievement. And so it's there, and they're going to focus on it a little bit more. The third area of opportunity is to expand on that teacher handbook. And the teacher handbook really implements board policy. Your board policy is up to date. You use Idaho School Board recommended policies when they fit, and those procedures really enact board policy. And so that will be one that you'll see that will come forward for approval, and it will be more detailed than it has been in the past. The fourth one, program fidelity. And this was a tough one. They wanted a little bit more description of what that means. Programs have to do with professional development, courses that are taught, and the decision to offer professional development has to be based on some need. We just can't say, hey, we're going to bring in a $15,000 speaker and fix everything. Doesn't work that way. The details, the devil really is in the details. And so to know what specific teachers need, when they need it, what curriculum needs to be adopted, and how that professional development fits is really, really important. Your return on investment of taxpayer dollars needs to be focused, and so that evaluation of professional development is really, really important to make sure that it works. The other area in program development that's more difficult sometimes, and change is so slow in public education. We have a model that requires us to teach math, science, social studies, and English. And what does that all include? And as times change, technology becomes more of an issue. School to work, jobs are different than they used to be. And so how does a school upgrade or change or eliminate or abandon programming to offer new programming? And so that's part of the program fidelity that is something that it's at the board level, it's at the district leadership level, all the way down to buildings and classrooms. And I always use the example of sports med. Sports med is an incredibly popular course, but how many sports med trainers do we need? Where maybe a nursing course might be more important. And so those things have to be evaluated on a constant basis to determine what's going to be best for kids, what's going to help kids make a living wage, and what's going to help kids maybe even stay in a community. So that's program evaluation, all to do with the big picture. Data application. And data application really underlies everything else. Using data to define the PLC structure. You've got a strong professional learning community structure in the schools, at Emmett High School. And that PLC structure approach to can constantly improve instruction has to be evaluated on a regular basis. And it's not just achievement data. It could be demographic data, it could be program data, it could be all different sorts of information that helps you make those decisions to increase student achievement and really to formalize that process, what happens in a PLC. So I'm going to go back to the engagement of a new process this year. for schools and for review teams. And you saw a letter from our Vice President of Engagement Services, Annette Bowling. And Annette Bowling described just in brief a little bit about the changes that took place this year and the opportunity to have a redo. And I thought, wow, that's really awesome. I'm more of an Idaho administrator than I am an advanced ed employee, because I think it's important that we support schools in Idaho, and to have that letter come from advanced ed was pretty great. And to see the school staff hold themselves accountable to make sure that they took advantage of that into this next year. So Mr. Jenkins asked a question about rubrics. So how's this stuff scored? And I'm gonna get into the weeds just a little bit with you. I'm gonna show you the document. This is the rubric that's used. And I'm just gonna talk to you about it. Use this in any, if I lose this, I'm gonna lose my place. I'll start talking about something else immediately. The I3, if you look at the very top of this, there are different colors of columns: engagement, implementation, results, sustainability, and embeddedness. The objective of anything we do is to leave some kind of a legacy. And hopefully that legacy is a good legacy. So when we make decisions, and you're sitting on a board, and when you leave, you hope that whatever was started that was good is continued. You're trying to embed a process, whatever that process might be. When I leave my post, I hope that the relationship continues to be strong between schools and the person who takes my place. And so what I try to do is embed good practices, good trainings, so people understand the good parts. And so if you look at the columns across the top, the idea is to engage folks in a process. Once they're engaged, then they implement those desired practices, whatever they might be. The objective of the implementation is trying to sustain those practices, and that takes time. It takes a couple of years of data to prove that there is sustainability. Go to the nursing course. Engaged in, and we started a new nursing course. We implemented it. Now we've got to figure out if there are any results. Is it sustainable? Can we keep it there? Is it something that we are actually having success with, and are kids able to go out and get a job? That means sustainability. Then embeddedness means that whatever it is, the nursing course I'm using as an example, is such a part of our culture that it's so important that whatever happens, it's going to continue, and people are probably going to come and see why it's so successful, whatever that practice is. And so if you go down on the columns, you will see on engagement, you're going to see few people are involved. So that's going to be the lowest level. And if you go down to the lowest right-hand block on the piece of paper, you're going to see the highest level of embeddedness. So there are 34 different standards that the review team comes in to measure. And they have everything to do from high expectations to student engagement to leadership to learning to resources. And it's very, very detailed. And the team comes in and they've got a day and a half to put this together. And it's very difficult. This being a new process was especially difficult this year because it was rolled out when we were already starting to put our plans together. And I will tell you that it was challenging. It's been a challenging year. I believe in this rubric. I think it's a great rubric. I think everything we do ought to be, whether it's a school review or our lives, I'm trying to leave a legacy. And how do I embed that legacy into the state of Idaho? So that's what's used, Mr. Jenkins. And there's a secret sauce. When the ratings go in, the numbers come out, and it is not a comparable number, should not be a comparable number with other schools. I wish it didn't even use the number or red colors on the stupid report. I don't like that at all. I think the idea of red colors defeats the purpose of authentic improvement. It says red, oh my gosh, red means stop. And in this case, it does not mean stop. So that's a little bit about the rubric. I hope that explains a little bit more about your question. And I want to, as I turn this back over to Mr. Carter, I just, this guy's been around. He served on a bunch of teams. I don't know how many reviews you've hosted in your career. This guy knows what he's doing. He's a good leader. And, he knows the strengths and the challenges of Emmett High School. He gets it. He knows kids. He knows the community. And I think that this work, taken in the right light and the opportunity to start these 5 areas of improvement and to give this staff the time they need to address those and put collaborative processes in place is really important. And having Craig come in right now to hear this and see what is going on, what could go on, this work is really going to help focus and lead a great school and an outstanding school district up to that next level. So there you have it for me. I want to pass it on to Wade, and I'm going to hang out and answer questions.
One question on the new program or process. Was there any training done to the schools about this process?
Yeah, there was training. Some of the process changed after I did my initial training in June, and then we did some other trainings in August, and Wade attended an additional training this spring, June 17th, I think,
after this was done, though.
Yeah, I attended one in October. Last October is a yearly one that all the administrators, I went to that one. I want to say that's like the first week of October.
Yeah.
And then I attended another one with Dale where he actually came out to PERDA and presented some stuff to PERDA.
So it was, the new process was explained, I assume.
It was, but none of us had gone through it yet.
Yeah.
It was like looking at the new car and not getting to drive it. And now we've gotten to drive it for a year, and we all understand it better. And the letter from Advanced Ed really speaks on its own. Yeah, let's do this again.
Madam Chair, Mr. Kleiner, is that how could you explain, since we might have viewers that tune in now or later, just in layman's terms, how often the review process takes place, how much it costs, are there competitive entities that also do it? Just the basics. So
Sure. The review process and Emmett High School has been accredited since 1921, one of the first in the state. Has changed over the years. The on-site review used to be every 9 years, and it was every 7, and now it's revolves every 5. And Advanced Ed now is actually moving, in addition to the every 5, of an annual reporting of improvement, just like the districts are doing with the state. Annual fee for membership is $1,200 for Advanced Ed. That gives you me and all of the tools. There are observation tools, there are diagnostics, the surveys that you do for the state are part of the platform that the school has the use of. A review is based on the size of the institution. And the review once every 5 years is an $1,100 fee, and that pays for an honorarium for the lead evaluator. The lead evaluator is a volunteer comes in and is trained and has about 20 hours worth of training. Then in the off years, like I say, there are reporting requirements. And let's see, what else? What have I missed?
The only other fees would be, we have to cover like cost of transportation, and
There you go.
if somebody has to stay in a motel, we have to cover that cost and meals and so forth.
We try to get teams as close by as we can, and it's pretty nice in this area. We've got a lot of districts real close, where if you go out to Dietrich or up to
Lador.
yeah, to Lador, but still there's salmon, there's Chalice,
Mhm.
and we can run folks over from Idaho Falls. That's always a challenge, but I've never had anybody who has served on an on-site review team say that it was a bad experience. It's a free professional growth opportunity to serve on a team and learn from other schools and learn with other schools. It's very, very collegial and been a good thing.
And is Emmett High School the only one that went through the process this year, or are there other schools in our district who also?
In this district? Let's see. Well, yeah, the charter school did. And so did
It's not for elementaries.
Right.
They don't go,
Yeah,
just,
Black Canyon went through it?
they go through this year.
Okay.
I think they and the Patriot Center are.
Patriot Center's coming up. Yep. Black Canyon?
I believe
Are they
it's this
coming
year.
up? Yeah. That's right. They were at the training.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have 58 reviews in Idaho this next year. Last year was 47. And like I said, it was a challenging year with the new process. It kept me busy. It kept me on the road. And we're all going to learn from it.
And are boards typically involved in the process?
It depends. It depends. If I'm on a review team or leading a review, I try to ask a board member. We don't want to post it, get a quorum or anything. It kind of depends. Yeah. Parents for sure. Teachers for sure. Some places we go. I was up at where was I? Nespers. We had the mayor. We had the John Deere dealership, and we had the deputy mayor.
And then my last question is the re-eval coming in the fall or in the spring?
What did you?
In January,
Okay.
the 20th. I sent in 3 dates, I think November, December, and January dates, and then they contacted me back and said, this is the date.
Okay.
And they're not going to charge us the $1,200 again. I'll still have to cover the mileage, but they've said there's some things here that we agree that it needs to be redone. So they're not going to charge us for that.
I was very pleased to see that.
I think that was in one of the letters I forwarded to you guys, the board also.
From Dr. Bowling.
You mentioned that it takes time, that this is a very slow process. Once you have an inspection and you see some effects, why would we want to reevaluate without this process having time to, say, cure itself?
Terry, that's a great question. I'm going to refer to
I'd like
Wade
you to answer it first, and then he can chime in.
You want me to go?
Please.
Monitoring reviews generally happen right away. It means the monitoring review is in place to encourage the school to get an action started. And that action may take 1 or 2 years to come to fruition. For instance, a school improvement plan is a long process because it's going to involve many, many different people. It's going to involve the professional learning communities. It's going to involve the curriculum. It's going to involve programming. It's going to involve the district level, and it takes time to implement. I'm working with a charter school right now, a brand new charter school who's just an applicant. And at some point during the application process, the school hosts what we call a readiness review. And that readiness review determines whether or not the institution has the capacity to become accredited. And that particular charter school has some areas that they need to put into place before they have the capacity. And so those things that they need to put into place have to have a plan to get started. And so that's why it's important to do the review right away while the fire's hot. And it encourages accountability to get started. And then an annual improvement process continues after that. That's a great question.
What I would say is that as soon as we got the report, my administrative team went through the report, and we realized that, as Dale said, this is a snapshot. They're literally there for a day and a day and a half doing this report. We realized that there were some things that we disagreed with on some of their review. And so I'm not saying they did it wrong. What I'm saying is I don't think I presented quite the right evidence to show that. And so when my admin team then sat down, we received a document in mid-January, and I shared it with you. It's the sources of evidence, and it goes by 1.1, and it gives examples and what kind of evidence to show that. We used that form then after we'd already sent our stuff in for our accreditation, for a review to come up. We were able to use that and then get a better idea of what kind of evidence they were looking at. The first one, this was my fourth one, accreditation, and I built it upon what we've done in the past, not understanding how this has changed so dramatically. So that's why we contacted right away, and then we were contacted about how it went. And so that's why I provided you our responses to some of their questions. And here's our evidence. If you read that piece, it showed you, here's our evidence to show that, no, we're doing better there than what we saw. I've been in contact with Dr. Andy Grover. He is the lead that did that, and sent him this information also. And he agrees that we just didn't see that. And if we'd have saw that, there would have been a difference. And so,
can you give us some examples?
Yes. So on one of them was the rigor of the courses. And we shared with him that we do a lot of dual credit, but we didn't share it in the proper message or the proper form of evidence to him. And so, like I said, our kids, over 2,000 dual credits will be earned this last year by juniors and seniors. That's college curriculum that we are teaching. And so the rigor is there. We're preparing these kids to go on. Every kid from the time they're a junior and a senior, any English they take is for dual credit if they choose to do the dual credit. So that's one example of that. We had some questions that we don't understand in the report. The exact wording on that was educators implement a curriculum is based on high expectation and prepares learners for the next level. We're doing as much with dual credit as anybody our size for the amount of size and stuff that we're doing. The institution attracts and retains qualified personnel who support the institution's purpose and direction. We didn't.
That was 3.4.
That one was
question about that one too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we just had some questions about these things that we needed some clarification, but we also knew that we had more evidence that we should have presented.
If I just may, you just said that the CIP could be put on a napkin.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that doesn't have much value?
The CIP?
Yeah.
It's on the back of a napkin?
Yeah.
I think I use that as an analogy. You can use any format for it.
What I'm saying, if it's that small, then
no.
It's not a big deal.
No.
It's not that small.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I just came from training in Boise, and they said every board meeting should have a CIP component in it, that's the most valuable part of what your school does. You're telling me it's not, and your report says that you don't follow a plan. You've got one, but you don't follow it.
No, what we do is we have a district continuous improvement plan. And if you look at ours with the pillars, under each area of the pillar, it has specifics for each school. Okay? But what other schools have is, and Boise is the same way, Boise School District does it the same way as that we do. I'm not saying Boise's right, but that's the same issue that they face. But if you look at our continuous improvement plan, in there, you will see Emmett High School, and here's our goal and how we're gonna measure that for strength.
Okay,
So
you've given all this information to me. I go to the website and I end up getting the stats that the Idaho puts on. Here's where we were 10 years ago. Here's where we are today, all over the district. And if it's not true,
It's not.
then why aren't you guys communicating that to us?
Well, I'm more than happy to, because I actually shared that with Mr. Teeter. After that last board meeting, when those people presented that chart,
Yep.
I did not take every high school in the state. What I took was the schools in our league. So Valley View, Ridgeview, Nampa, Columbia, all those schools that are in our league. And I showed, and from that same report, Idaho Trends, and if you look at every single one of them, they all have that where they've all dropped and they're slowly coming up. I went even farther. I broke the back data down, and I will send it to you, that Emmett High School has more years where they were number one in the highest percentage in math and English than there is any other school.
Well, what does Idaho Trends don't have that you have?
That they have the same thing.
Then why are they saying that we're so low?
What they're not telling you is that they changed test vendors. They changed the test. If you look at every high school in the state, they were all high at one point. Then they changed the test vendor. Those scores, I think it was 13, 14. They didn't have a test. So you remember they did not have a score. But then the new test vendor came in and we all dropped because it was completely different. I can show you the same thing with SAT. We're number one in English in our league and number two in mathematics with scores.
Well, I'd sure like to be enlightened, because right now I think we're lousy.
Well, and what I would tell you, I can sit down and share all that with you if you would like.
I would very much appreciate
I did show, Bob came and saw me one day and I showed it to him.
Unfortunately, I sat behind that poster, so I didn't have anything to say what it was bad.
Which is why I chose him, because he really.
I didn't
But
know.
listen, you're never going to hear me say we're perfect. You're never going to hear me say that. We can always improve. Okay. And my issue with this report is I want to give you an accurate report. And I do not feel like this is an accurate report. I'm not blaming anybody. I'll take more responsibility. I think the evidence and the hours that we put in were just directed at the wrong area of evidence of what they've wanted, because it is so different. We now know, we have a paper that says, here's the examples of evidence, and we can take that, and we've already started doing that. Now, there are some things in this report that I agree with 100%. So they pointed out to me our teacher handbook. We had a teacher handbook, it's in place. It's not the detail that more districts are going to. Since then, I've gone out and researched other districts. They've given me some schools to look at, and we are completely redoing our teacher handbook. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be coming to our new superintendent when we have it done, because I would like him to look at it, and it probably should be a district teacher handbook. That's what we're trying to do. We're incorporating board policy as they change. We're listing them in there for the information.
Those are the handbooks we just approved here.
Those are student handbooks. This is the one strictly for teachers.
Okay.
So, and I can send you what we have, Terry, but I would like you to know it's a very rough draft and it's a working.
These test scores, because as I read this and when I listened to you, you seem to validate the report, and you're capitalizing on his effort to improve from that report. He seems to disagree with what's in that report to some extent. So we're a board member. I'm agreeing here. I'm trying to educate myself, so when I go out into the public, I know what to say.
Right.
Right now, I'm not happy.
Madam Chair, I want to address that just a little bit. I think that there are areas in the report that need to be that need to be adjusted based on the response from the school. And that's why Wade called me immediately. And so then I had a chance to look at the report. I talked to Dr. Annette Bowling and said, we've got to give these folks another opportunity. However, there are places in the report that are pertinent and there are areas that can be improved. And so I think that that's really important to recognize both ends of that spectrum. If you can't learn from it, it's been a complete waste of time. There are areas, and Wade wants to present that as accurately as he possibly can to the board. And I think that's why, we had some requests early on for a copy of the report to be distributed. Well, the report isn't accurate and should not be distributed. It's an internal document. It was not taken to the Advanced Ed Global Commission and approved even. They put it back on the shelf. Let's do this right.
Madam Chair, is that okay? Mr. Kleiner, Mr. Carter, my concern, to me, the bigger issue is the transparency of it. We're doing it 5 months after the fact, and the next steps, the first one's review and share the findings with stakeholders. To me, in full transparency, and that's the bigger cultural issue we have to deal with. I don't know if it's a fear of this board. I'd heard rumblings of that or yada, 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 but we're in this together. So if it's the test scores or if it's certain validity in this report that needs to be improved upon or argued upon, so be it. But we have to move forward as a united front. We can't be kept in the dark 5 months after the fact. And when there's clear explanations that can be given to this board that we're going to redo this in the fall and there's just reason for it. But it's just bad PR internal.
But I shared with you the letters that we were getting from Advanced Ed telling you those things.
It still doesn't mean anything until we do this.
I understand, and you're right. There is some fear.
Well, and
this was agreed that we would be doing this in August when we come back to work.
Actually, I have emails that said it was going to happen, in June, May or June? I could pull those up between.
Not from me, I don't believe.
Well, from your boss, but.
Well, so, in the June meeting, it was discussed that we would do this in August, and then I get a call from no, we're doing it in July.
Well, that's because now you're dating back to February. So whether it's May, June, or July or August is beside the point, because basically that's the human nature. People's minds run. That's just bad public relations. Good public relations is upfront.
Well, I would hope that you would trust me enough. Look at the review 5 years ago. According to Dr. McCurdy, some of the highest scores she's ever seen. They didn't know what to tell us to improve upon. It was not that I'm keeping this report from you, but I want to present to this board an accurate report. And I'm being told this is not an accurate report. There's some concerns.
See, the confusion.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
the confusion for us, and that's why I'm asking Mr. Kleiner, our board's typically a part of this process. And he says sometimes they are. Maybe it's one or two board members, so it's not violating open meeting, what have you. Whereas we were not included, so be it. But we're aware that the certification is happening, and yet then there's no transparency other than little tidbits of information. So we're left wondering and pondering, and that's why we're pressing for what's happening today, is because we had little to no information, basically a justification without any base to it. So I do appreciate the effort and the time that you guys are here today, but it is 5 months, a little bit, not too late, but it doesn't show much appreciation for the process or the governing board and allowing us to help you as an administrator in this process. Moving towards improvement.
I'd like to add just a little bit, because I did converse with Wade. My thoughts, I kind of likened it to a kid with a bad report card and not wanting to show his parents. And the parents got to sign the report card. And I kind of look at the board as being the parent in this situation. We can't do anything. We can support the decision that this report was flawed, but we need to know what the report is. And Wade did offer to have me read the report. I did read it 3 weeks ago, a month ago. I don't remember when it was, Wade. And my comment was to you is I see 5 areas, at least 5 areas after an overnight review that can be improved. I think you've hit on 4 of the 5 that I picked in that simple review I did. It's just a picture. To me, it's just a snapshot of some qualified people of our school. Their opinions are valuable. I think they're all very qualified. Reading their resumes, I have no question to question them. We just take that and move forward. And that's what I think the whole process is. And that's what I was trying to get at. How do we, as a board, support, even if it's pushing back, great, we'll push back. If we think it's like a teacher, you say, well, I don't think this teacher taught my student correctly. He didn't take into account my week late paper that I turned in. He gave me an F on it. Well, maybe there's some arguments there, but maybe there aren't any arguments there. So the same things. It all just boils down, and we just needed to know.
I have one question. Did you write this, Mr. Carter? Planning forward?
Yes.
So the continuous improvement plan is the school improvement plan?
So
Or
here's,
is that
well,
different?
so what I would say is with our new superintendent, I'm not sure how he's done it in the past, but we as a building are going to have our own, and I'm sure it's going to tie to whatever the district improvement plan is.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify so everyone knows that there might be one on the website that might be different than what the plan is.
I can't really answer that because I mean,
So, and I just had a few minutes to talk with Dr. Roberts this morning, if you don't, or this afternoon, and she said she was going to get me a copy of, actually, you use a district improvement plan and you actually have multiple schools underneath it. Our district has gone to my former district had gone to the consolidated plan as far as the SIP plans, the school, your continuous improvement plan. We use a strategic plan, so I'll have to look and see where we're at. I think each building should have a plan, but it should all fit under the umbrella of the district. And I just think that's the way we need to look at that. And how we do that, whether we use, I'm not even sure if you used your SWIP, the school-wide improvement plan through your title funds.
we're not a Title I school.
Oh, well, then you don't have to worry about that. But
That's the other issue that
we'll
Title
go
I
through that.
schools, they have other requirements. Emmett High School is not a Title I school. So we do not receive Title I funding. So it is a little bit different. So we don't, technically, we didn't have to have a building one as long as we had a district one. And that's kind of the way we went. So,
But it should all tie underneath our district. And
Right.
what's our district goals? What's our improvement plan going to look
and that's
like?
kind of how it was built on our pillars. If you look at the pages, it'll have for each elementary and then high school and middle school, kind of what their goals were and what they were going to work on, along with the data from the years of scoring and so forth on tests.
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, I wanted to just go down the back of a napkin analogy just
It's
a minute. The
Tablecloth, you mean?
the table. An improvement plan is one of the most important things that happens in any institution. If there is no plan, no matter how that plan is developed, you're not going to get down the road. And so I use the back of the napkin analogy that if that's the plan, follow it. Those goals are important. And if you don't make those goals, then fix the plan. And the other important component of that improvement plan is the implementation component and activities that happen down to, in our situations, down to the classroom level. And so I completely agree with you about the importance of that improvement plan. Every board meeting, every time you meet, you've got to look at your goals and figure out, okay, where are we going? Which turn are we going to take? I like to turn it Chicken Dinner Road, but there's no chicken dinner out there anymore.
One of the things I would share that might help too is this was the question that was asked to me by the committee when they came in. They said, Wade, we can tell you have an extremely strong RTI. There's other districts that have come to us for training, but they said, we mean no offense by this, but if you died tomorrow, what's in place to continue that process? I have a team and we know what we're doing and we've been doing it for quite some time, but we didn't have anything in writing that said, if Wade Carter left tomorrow, this is what we're going to continue to do. And that's kind of some of the things that we have to go back and fix. That's what's going to go back into our teacher manual.
You know, in reading this report, Madam Chair, it touts that you have an RTI. My concern is a third of your school goes through that RTI. Why do you have that many kids in trouble? If your teaching process, this report sort of validates me, my thinking, and that if you got that many kids in RTI, something over here isn't doing the job.
I could give you a combination of things. 65 or 70% of our parents work over the hill. We have a lot of kids that are raising themselves in latchkey. We have kids that don't get a meal unless they come to school. We have all kinds of factors. If I could answer that with teenagers, how I could motivate teenagers to take these things serious, whoever I included, we'd be very rich. It's a challenge that every school is facing with teenagers. It is a challenge that we face every day with our kids. I would love to have that answer, but I'm not sure there is a clear answer of how to fix that. But that's why we have RTI in place, so that we are catching those kids and we can stay at that 93 to 97% graduation rate. That's why we have that rate. I think I presented to this board the different categories for graduation rate, and I think our lowest was 88%, and that was because that year we had 4 seniors who were in special ed, and one of them didn't graduate on time. But here's what the board, and most boards don't understand. We have to go back and track every single kid from 4 years ago. So he could have been with me for 2 months, and when he left, he's held against me if he didn't leave and graduate. There are things like that. I agree with you. I would love to be able to drop that and not have RTI, but it isn't just the low kids that are struggling. It's the advanced kids.
I want to mention that RTI is much more than just kids who are struggling with classes also.
Can you introduce yourself to me?
I'm Katie Watkins.
Katie is my new assistant principal.
You're the vice president.
Yes. It's much more than just grades. And it's not, you don't necessarily have one singular student who comes before the RTI board who is failing 5 classes. I have recommended students as a teacher to the RTI process, and for a kid who's only failing my class. And it may be one of our top students, our most gifted students, and they're just digging their heels in. And it's not an ability issue, it's a behavior issue. So the range of interventions that you offer is much more than just a student failing 5 classes. And I think that that's what we assume it is that we're getting a third of our students through the process because they're failing all of their classes. And that's just simply not what it is.
Madam Chair. So in this process, how many times are the parents involved in it?
I would like to tell you that more parents want to be involved. A lot of parents are contacted. Most of them have some of the same concerns. Tell me how to get my kid to do this. Tell me how to get my kid motivated. I fight my kid to get up every day. So we have a lot of parents involved, but we have very few that have any ideas or solutions.
And as a teacher, when you recommend a student to the RTI process, there's a question on there of how many times have you contacted the parent and what have you done in your classroom to combat the problem that you have.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? So is that data gathered in any way? Do we put it into?
That's collected in what we call mileposts.
Okay, so all those contacts are in there, perfect, or just the RTI process?
Well, we collect notes from every meeting, and then during the meeting, we will say, for example, well, we've got Dale Kleinert in here, he's failing a class, so I want his counselor, whoever his counselor is for that grade level, to contact mom and dad, whether it's to just contact and make a voice contact with them or to set up a meeting between us or whatever it could be.
Okay, curious. I love to look at data, so I was just wondering what kind of data, but I can look at mileposts too.
But Madam Chair, one more thing. I think that's the important thing of a continuous improvement plan within your school that you have stead over. yes, it falls under the district CIP, but each school is going to be different. You have a different set of teachers, you have a different administrator. And so I think that continuous improvement plan has to fit your program and the people that teach under you.
And it does. The district continuous improvement it was not just Mr. Rush saying, okay, here's what it was input from staff, from administrators. It's something that every month in our admin meetings, we go over an area. How are we doing in this area? Is it working? Is it not working? What do we have to change? What do we have to modify? Where do we get the data? So that is, I guess I just want you to understand that there is input from as many people as possible. The challenge that we have is I can get parents to come, but you know what they want to come for? Athletics. They want to come and that is the challenge that we have.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that they're willing to come and help with an athletic event, but I called 40 parents for this process and invited them to come in. I think we had 4 show up. I probably had 30 of them said, yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there.
So in your opinion, Mr. Carter, how do we help change that? How do we facilitate that?
We've already built an engagement plan using
It has to start with the parents, right?
Right, and we do a lot of things already. The biggest thing for us to get more parents out is to feed them. That sounds kind of ridiculous, but like our FAFSA night, our scholarship nights, our college nights, we offer dinner and we get more people to show up for that. Our parent-teacher conference, maybe 15 to 20%. And who shows up for that 15, 20%?
People.
It's the parents whose kids have good grades most of the time. Now, I think I've told this board before. We divide up, and Katie will now, but I take certain grade levels and I call every parent that's child has multiple Fs or low grades, and I personally invite them to come. I can tell you, I don't know another principal that does that. Okay, but we're reaching out on the phone, we're reaching out with daily announcements, we're reaching out with social media, we're expanding that. We're trying to expand these things so that parents know that. If you looked at I included in there the surveys. If you haven't had a chance to go and look at those, I would tell you to go and read the responses. Unfortunately for the parents, we only got 66. That was after 3 reminders to please go in and fill this out. This is critical for us. We need your help.
That's the surveys that
Yeah.
When you sent them to us, we got about half of the report. Every other page came, something like that.
That was on the earlier reports, but on the surveys too?
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Right, and we
okay.
rescanned them and sent them in Tuesday morning.
I didn't get it. I
was on there this morning and I had the same report, so I couldn't see the whole
Okay,
thing.
we'll look. I apologize then. I knew about.
I knew you got it. I thought, well, yeah, they just didn't find that portion or something.
Well, no. We'll go back.
It's there.
That's Mr. Carter and copiers that.
You know,
You gotta push
Madam
them.
Chair, if I may, we've talked a lot about how to measure. And I go online and look at the IDO trends and you say that information isn't accurate.
It is
If I may-
accurate to a certain degree, but there's more to it than what they're telling you.
Well, let's take the go-on rate. We got what, less than 40% of our high school.
46. I think we're at 46% this year.
Well, the last one I saw was 39. So
Well, but
that's
here's
semantics.
the problem. They do that as a district. So they're not only including Emmett High School, but they're also including Black Canyon and the Patriot Center. That's why it's 39, but Emmett High School, I believe, is at 45 or 46%, which is the state average. Now, am I pleased with that? No.
How do I, as a board member, get the accurate information?
Come sit down with me.
I'll be glad to.
So accurate information on graduation rate, the best way is go through the State Board of Ed because the Idaho trends is going to be at least a year behind typically. And so, and we have to reach out for that every year with your continuous improvement plan. That data needs to be included. So, and we reach out, they'll pull it and they'll tell us exactly what it is. And I can find it for you. And the other one is our new state report card reporting system. That's going to be the best and most accurate piece of information because it's coming directly from our IC. The new, is that Idaho Trends and the niche, whatever, those two things are, the data is not always accurate.
That should be something that we have a packet with on a continuous basis, whether it's quarterly or biannual, whatever, so that you can keep us informed, so that we know that, what we read here isn't exactly what is the actual. And I think you could help yourself out a whole lot if you keep us up to date.
And it's the same thing with ISAT testing. That's why, as a district, we went to STAR testing. ISAT testing results come to us so late, we can't do anything with it. The kids that a teacher has, she gets those results after they're gone. How can she go back and use that data? Doesn't make sense.
Why do we test?
Well, it's a state requirement. But that's why we as a district then said, okay, we're going to STAR test 3 times a year so we can track those kids and see if we see the progress and stuff going forward. But there's some things that aren't Emmett School District. There's some things at the state level that don't always make sense. But I have no problem making a report to you that kind of gives you this overall.
Well, where
but
I
some
come
of it
from,
may be, like he said, a year behind, but I can give to you as much information as you want.
my background in boardmanship is with billion-dollar companies. I've sat on those boards. And, marketing talks to us every board meeting. Procurement talks to us. IT, human resource. We all get a report every board meeting, and we have, some are quarterly, some are monthly. And I'm sitting here and, I got to find wherever I can go. We don't get reports from you.
Well,
we don't get reports from
board reports. We used to do monthly board reports every school.
Things got too long, so we cut them.
Well, and I'm not sure the board
I
ever
don't
read
need
them.
I don't need a monthly
I don't mean
report.
that mean.
think,
I don't mean that mean. But
maybe every 3 months, something that'll keep us current. Because I like numbers. I remember numbers. And when I look at the statistics, and that seems my only avenue, I want to value our leadership, whether it's your school or the other school, whatever. I want to know that we're doing our job. And when I read that report and I look at Idaho Trends and other places, geez, this is beginning to make sense. Things are that's bad.
What I would do is look at Idaho Trends and who's putting that report out. That's the same group that's also putting the ads on TV that talks about leaving kids behind. And I'm telling you that we are not leaving kids behind. We are doing everything we can. For 5 straight years, we have had every senior apply to a post-secondary institution. Whether they go or not, they apply. And I would range that we are almost 100% acceptance somewhere. So we are helping these kids and we are getting them to that point. But it's not just us. It's their parents. It's the fear of money. I'm gonna talk to Ronnie because Ronnie has kids that are going to school and college. It is scary for kids.
Well, we're sitting here wanting to fix the broken parts of the school district. And I'm not talking classroom, I'm talking buildings. We're going to ask this community for a lot of money. And I want to go out there and talk about the successes and not the failures, because failures are not part of the solution. They're part of the problem. So
I have lots to give you.
In our training over there, they talked about what superintendent was said about using the report card.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at it a little bit while we were sitting there. Do you remember looking at that? I can't remember.
I remember a little bit.
I think we looked at science or something like that, right? I'm trying to remember what it was.
Yeah.
And I know we weren't faring, whatever we looked at, we weren't faring very well in. Can't remember if it was science or English.
Math we've had a struggle with.
I think it was science.
Math is the lowest. Well, math is the lowest area with the lowest percentile and averages across the state. But I think with our new math curriculum, we're going into year 2 of that. And I think we're going to see a continual jump. We jumped at the high school level about 4% on both again this year.
I think at either last meeting or meeting before last, I remember something about you hit like 13 of 15 points or targets that you met. I was just hungry for it. What are you talking about? What targets? What have you done that has improved so many areas? And I'd love to have you speak to that instead of just saying, well, this is the statistics. But, you know, statistically without.
What I would say is that the relationship has been tense between the board and the administration, and I want to get past that. I want you to feel like you can come into my building at any time and sit down with me and ask me questions. The one thing you will hear me say is, yeah, we're not doing a good job there, or yes, we're doing a good job there. I sat down with Bob for just a few minutes when he came in to look at that report, and I'm not gonna say forced him, but I said, I want you to look at something while you're here. Here's the last, since 09, here's our test scores on the ISATs. And look at, here's the scores for every school in the league. So you can see, it's not just Emmett that did that drop and is starting to come up. It's every school in the state. But you have to understand there's factors, there's new test vendors, it's a different test. My kids went in and took a test a couple of years ago and I chewed a kid's butt. He walked out after about 5 minutes. That's after I had gone into that class when they were getting ready to test on the ISAT and I said, you give me your best effort. If you don't do well, I'm okay, but you give me your best effort. And 5 minutes later, he comes out of that room and I lit him up, Terry. I'm gonna be honest with you. In 5 minutes, you couldn't give me, he said, Mr. Carr, there's 3 questions. Oh. I look like an idiot. 3 questions. You miss one of those questions, where's your percentage of proficiency gonna be?
66.
But that's what I'm saying. This process, some of this is new. It happened, I want to say quite a while ago when the ISAT test was modified. I don't even want to guess, 10, 15 years ago. You saw the same thing, this drop, and then everybody started understanding what types of questions they were asking and scores were coming up. And you saw in 09 and 08, we had high percentages. Then the test changed. You saw that big drop. Now you're seeing the scores are slowly coming up. They're not high and they're not great, but they're slowly coming up because we understand what the test is.
I want to comment on that because I was just a classroom teacher a few months ago, and it's not just looking at data, because we can look at it and we can see that these are poor numbers, but it's the application of that data. And that takes a lot of time because it not only impacts classroom instruction, but then you have to modify your EOC or your end of course exam to fit those same types of questions that have been regenerated by those standardized tests. And so then you're asking your teachers to write their own end of course exam and find the time to do it and ask thought-provoking questions to reflect that standardized test. So it's not just we see that we have poor numbers, let's just fix it.
That's why all of our teachers were in training for the first week after school was out, because they were redoing lessons and looking at areas that we need to improve. And is that in our curriculum? And they were revising the curriculum and the pacing guides and working together to do that. Stephen Thane sat here tonight and talked about early childhood education and vocabulary. Vocabulary is huge at the secondary level. If we are not using the vocabulary that's used on the SAT and the ACT and the ISATs, we're using a different vocabulary. That is confusing for our kids. So we are always modifying the curriculum, trying to adjust the curriculum to best meet the needs of the students and the state.
So we're training to a test.
Unfortunately, that's the game. I don't like the game, and I use my own daughter. AB student, struggled on tests, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. Good student, got one of 2 of ISU's top scholarships for academics. Well, if you based it on her test scores, she didn't deserve it. But that kid worked her ass off, excuse my language. And she busted her butt and she had the skills. So we got to look at the whole child here. We deal with homelessness, we deal with suicides, we deal with kids that aren't getting fed. We are dealing with major issues. The last thing for some of those kids that they're worried about are their grades or their education. They're trying to figure out where their next meal's coming.
And as a classroom teacher, it's really difficult to give a kid a computer and say, take a STAR test when the last time they ate was dinner the night before. And now we're at 2:00 in the afternoon.
The state even recognizes that. Now for ISAT testing, they'll send us granola bars and juice and stuff like that to give to the kids before they test.
Just a side note, if I may, you know I'm in Rotary.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for projects. How can we help? And I'm not looking for an answer right now. You and I will have a conversation, but think about it and say, Terry, you know, if you did A, B, or C, I think this would help the community. So.
And I'm sorry to break down.
It's okay.
You guys know I care about these kids. I will have one child in the high school for 16 straight years, one of my own. Okay. So I have like Ronnie, I have a tie to that school, and I want success for my kid as much as any other kid. And I truly believe that we are doing some excellent, excellent things. And we are going above and beyond what other districts and schools are doing. That doesn't mean they're not great schools. But for our size and what we can offer, we are doing a phenomenal job. $2 million we reached in scholarships this year. For 160 some kids, $2 million available to those kids. That's amazing. Capital High School didn't even make $1 million. Okay. We're doing some phenomenal things. And that's what I want your guys to help me get that word out. Because sometimes I feel like people, oh, you're just making, no. We've got the data. We can show you the proof. We've got the things that are good things that are happening.
Madam Chair. Well, and part of it is for another conversation. And I made a presentation at the board meeting at Carberry, which we were still there, and we were probably in yawn mode at that point. But it was all on the importance of good district communication, public relations, and whether we employ an individual in that position or we assign that duty to somebody who's looking for an extra stipend. But it's all about the propaganda and getting the word out. And we just, as a district, traditionally haven't done a good job. And we have a captive audience. It's not the largest community in the world. So it's like.
Madam Chair. So I'm going to share something with you that I shared with Mr. Rush 2 months ago. We live in a day and age when you deal with what's most important to most people. And there's two things, kids and their money. And now the addition of nobody can stay out of anybody's business. It just doesn't happen. We need, this day and age, communication in all things. And I think if you say you want all this squashed, I think that's all it'd take, Wade. I really do.
And I feel like some of that we've been doing. I'll give you a prime example. We showed the video slide with that new E.
Mm-hmm.
On social media, I have some lady that just starts ripping us. And I'm not going to respond to social media. That's not my job. I'm sorry, I'm not going to. But we had a student get on there and rip her apart. And I wanted to say thank you, because he made the point that we're doing great things here. And instead of you're out here on social media being negative, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And somehow I agree. We've got to get this information out.
I think you would be surprised what it would do for all the naysayers, because then they don't have anything to complain about.
Yeah, it steamrolls them.
It rolls downhill no matter what.
Right.
So if it's out there, they have nothing to complain about.
Right.
Except themselves.
And I don't have a problem if you want every other month a board report from me. I'm perfectly
Give us
fine.
something to work with.
I did that for 15 or 16, 17 years. I've been given monthly board
It
reports.
doesn't
So
have to be a big thick thing, 2 or 3 pages of.
No, it's usually one page, and it's just, here's positives, here's what we're working
So
on.
Madam Chair, Mr. Carter, so you felt like previous boards didn't read that or look at that?
Well, I think at times that the board packet is, I don't remember what June's was, 195 pages. Do you have time to read 195 pages?
I read most of it.
I read every page.
Well, okay. So I think
I'm not gonna
sometimes
lie to
though-
you, I kind of have to in the
I
position
think
I'm
this
in right at
board
the moment.
is reading everything.
Okay, and so I think that just, I think at the time was difficult for some of the board members. And so, you know, we would get asked questions that was right there in our
Yeah.
board report. And so I think at the time, the board said, if we have a question, we'll come to you. We don't have time to look at that. And it's not that they weren't good boards. They
I'm
have a
not
lot
saying-
on their
I'm not
plate.
saying-
You guys know how much work this takes.
I'm not saying that. I'm
Yeah.
not implying anything. I just,
Well, I'm not either.
because I'm like Mr. Jones. Sorry, Madam Chair. I'm like Mr. Jones. I wouldn't mind having a report from you, even if it was quarterly
And maintenance.
and
Yeah.
maintenance. But that's,
So maintenance.
I would like to know maintenance from the high school, for sure.
Are the district.
But I mean, just each school, I would like to have a maintenance report, all those types of reports. I think that's
Maybe with our new superintendent, when we have our first admin meeting, maybe we can put something together that will include maintenance and here's positives and here's concerns.
I would like to hear a
here's
report
questions.
from you, even quarterly.
I have no problem with that.
I do want to say something. When I went to the PERDA meeting and they shared their advanced ed report, and then I was waiting for our report, and then we didn't receive it. I did email Mr. Kleinhert for the report. And then I was just curious why we're not seeing the report. And so finally, we obviously got the report, and yes, there's it needs to improve and some things that we need to work on, but this is, my main concern was why we didn't receive it, but now I do understand some more about it, but this is not a make fun of anybody to me. I'm not making fun, but we didn't have an opportunity we've always been told we've had one employee, and I think there's like a roadblock of communication. And I think now the communication arrow is we need to just communicate better. And I had a meeting previous to our meeting today with Mr. Woods about communicating more, and because I really thought, I would like to help, because we wasted 5 months to me, I feel like we've wasted 5 months, but obviously in those 5 months, you got on the ball to get things going to improve that, and teachers are redoing their lesson plans
But we've been doing that for years, so you know that.
so like when Cindy had come to me and asked for some things, and then I thought, then I can't do that because I'm can't cross over to the management, because I think this board, we want to help, and we want to see the kids be the best, and we want things to be on the positive track. So I think
through our conversations, one of the concerns, and I said this, I think in the June board meeting, is that there's concerns that this was not an accurate report. And I think that based on the relationship that's kind of been going on, and I don't mean that mean, I'm not blaming anybody on either side. Yeah, there's nerves that, what is the agenda?
the agenda is the board agenda, or wherever it is.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, and it's, the agenda to me is our agenda of a meeting. It's not the agenda to go out and let's do an I gotcha.
Well, for me, the agenda's always been culture. And that's based on communication and being proactive with communication. And that builds trusting relationships. And I mean, we'd be BS and all of us sitting here if we said any of those things have been good. So we're trying to flip a switch ourselves, and we're all in this mess together, and there's only one way out of it. It's to climb. So.
Yeah, I drove by the E the other night. I thought, oh, wow.
Right.
And
I have no problem giving you a report. And I will make a presentation as soon as this is done, when we have what I feel is an accurate report. But I would hope that this board would go, okay, we have the regional guy here saying there's some issues with the report. We know there's issues. This report, it doesn't matter how well you score, they're always going to give you recommendations for improvement. Okay, on the last one, 4 or 5 years ago, they sat me down, Dr. McCurdy, and said, we don't know what to tell you to improve. You know what they told me finally? The one thing is we need to take better notes in our meetings. Well, if that's the worst that we had, we were pretty tickled with that. So I want to make sure that you have accurate information for the exact reason, like you were talking about Idaho Ed Trends. I look at that all the time. I can go on there and compare schools and where we're at, and I do it all the time to look at that. But you have to know, is that information 100% accurate?
You know, I take it as gospel until today.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I've been using that information to talk to the public, and I think it's behooving to you. If you know that information is inaccurate, you need to let us know.
Okay.
No, I want to put the best light on whatever we're doing here.
Right.
I want to be the best board of director I can possibly be. And if that's all the information I got, that's what I'm telling the public. You know, for 5 months we sit here, and you know, we did a lot of thinking. What is he hiding? Why won't he let us know what he's doing? I says, I at the last meeting, I says, carry us through the process. Let us learn with you. Let us understand what you're doing. I've learned more here in 2 hours than I have in the last 5 months. And I've got a lot of dismissing to do.
But I would tell you that this board, I agree with what Jefferson said, but a prime example, your auditor stood before you and told you that you have a high school that has more money than he's ever seen, or something, he worded it in that direction. And what happens? This board calls me out and on that process. So what am I supposed to think?
No, we wanted to understand the process, and it was a positive.
Well, there were questions that were sent to me that were accusatory, very accusatory.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Carter, I thought you held yourself very candidly in that situation.
Right.
I thought it was.
But I would think as a board, when you're hearing from an auditor that your high school has a lot of money, I would love to have heard one of these board members say, Mr. Carter, what are you doing? That's fabulous. What are you doing? Instead, I received questions of accusations.
And I didn't see the questions, but I believe they came from the public, because again, that goes back to us not doing a good job communicating with the public. So everybody assumes the worst.
And I can speak to that because I was the person that sent Mr. Carter the questions because.
Well, no, there was others that sent other board members too.
Well, I had, like I said, met with Mr. Woods, and I get bombarded with the public. And I have a lot of questions, and I thought, I'm just going to send this to Wade. And when we had that work session, I haven't had any questions.
And I don't mind doing those. I think those are good as we get new board members to do those, and I agree with that. And I would hope that down the road that, you know, we've had a tense few years with some coaches and so forth, and some coaches left and some things like that. I would hope that this board would look at a question and go, that doesn't sound quite right. Because I know the auditor just told me the high school's got more money than most high schools have. You would think that would be, so I'll find out. Come sit down. I've invited every one of you, and I will do this all the time. Please come sit down with me.
But then again, I think of communication that we've been told that.
And I know that, I understand that, because we've talked about that before.
That we have.
So,
one.
But I'm telling you, as long as our new superintendent doesn't mind, my door is open.
So, thank you. Yeah, not at all. Madam Chair, may I say a couple things? I'm just sitting here and listening to this. One, I see us a very supportive board that wants to learn. That's what I see, that they're asking questions, not for the gotcha, but for the better of this district. Two, we have not a transparency, but a communication concern that we just need to fix between our administration and our board, so they're there. But we also need to train the board. I mean, just like you said, you said we hit these targets, and Terry's going, I don't even know what these targets mean. We just need to do a better job, and that's going to be our job,
Right.
to do that, so they understand the information that we gave them. The report is the report, and we understand that. And I agree, I would have wanted to see it earlier, because then we could have gone on from there. But now we're going to move forward from that and at least look at it. And you've done some great work in there. But I'm pretty impressed with what we're trying to do is get that information, and just they're asking questions, and then back and forth. That's that communication side. So just my 2 cents of sitting here, what I've seen. So I'm very happy we can get somewhere. We just need to start moving forward. You know.
Madam Chair, I just have one thing I wanted to add. You hit 4 of the 5 points that I saw when I read the report. The one big elephant in the room to me is, and this came about in our facilities tour for our new superintendents, HERDA. And one of our candidates came in and says, your school's broken. From that facilities meeting at the high school. Your school is broken. Now, what are we supposed to do with that?
What, okay, I'm not.
Between PERDA, some comments were made about PERDA at the high school, and I wasn't there, so but he came in and made that comment to us right up front. And it's been broken for a while, and it's something that there's no reason for it in my mind, that facility is good for our students, and we need to make this thing work. That's just my bottom line.
And I would love to have a conversation with the board. I am 100% behind PERDA as what they are trying to do. That is not the issue. The issue I have, though, are there are some areas that I think that we need to talk about. So, and I don't mean to, like tonight when we talked with PERDA, but I'm not sure you guys understood that 50 kids, we split that money. And that what all we do to support PERDA. You as a board, they are only paying us $1 rent, and we're doing all this work. And then when I hear PERDA come in and say, well, we want to cut 100 and whatever the amount was, I'm going to fight for our district. And I don't mean that mean, and I try not to be disrespectful with PERDA, but I want you, the board, there is no other administrator in this room or even in that room except for Mrs. Jenkins that has been in with this situation from the very beginning. Do you realize that? When I first went to the high school, I did the job of the principal and the VP while Bill Nickram developed this program. I was there from the ground up. And I know the good things that are happening, but I also know that at times there's things that I kind of step back and go, whoa, wait a minute. But I have not been able to have anybody that would sit down and listen and say, I take that back. Ralph Erb came to me one time and we met, 5 months ago, 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And President Harris was there, our board chairman Harris was there, and we talked and I expressed my concerns. I will be honest with you. I think we should be charging them more.
Or what?
Money.
More money.
Yeah, but for what?
You said
we do dollar rent. You mean more rent money?
Well, whether it's rent or more for the services that we provide.
Okay.
The other thing I would tell you that's concerning is that the community does not see Payette River. If their kid has an issue with a Payette River teacher, who do they call?
I think we're getting off.
Yeah, and I know that. But I mean, that's the kind of things that I don't want to sound like I'm against, but we've got to have communication.
Well, I think
we have
our board and their board, like today, when they talked it out and they thought, hey, yeah, they might, they're right with having an employee be employed by the Emmett School District. And I think there's going to be some good positive changes and better communication.
And also too, obviously, Mr. Carter and you, Mrs. Watkins, are significant stakeholders in the process. You take ownership of that campus. So I mean, maybe it's appropriate.
On 12.
You can weigh in with Superintendent Woods prior to, he's got an opportunity to meet with those administrators and the attorneys and stuff. And I'm sure he doesn't want to go into that completely blind. But anyway, just in the best use of time, but.
Okay.
Yep, I think that, you know, it's just what's best for the kids in our district. I think that's quote, what's best for those kids. Not all of them are going on to college.
Oh, I agree 100%. I agree 100%.
I am, I've been on a couple of committees over there at the high school, and I, like the attendance committee, PERDA needs to be there. They haven't been since I've been there, and it fell through somebody's radar.
They've been invited to everything.
But they hadn't been for a while.
And you have to understand, they have a different leader now. So there's some little
I'm
more
gonna
things.
push for that.
Yes,
Being on the dual board,
he's been more involved, but
You mean someone from their board is on the attendance committee or a staff member on the attendance?
well, they used to have Shelley Overmeyer. She was a staff person,
Right.
but Shelley retired.
Mhm.
I don't know if Pat's ever gone at all.
Rich said he just forgot to invite somebody after he retired, and they did send an invitation. Pat accepted, but he missed the two that I was there. I just want to push to get somebody there.
Right.
That's my point. They need to be involved, engaged. Because they're kids too.
Right.
Yeah, I would say humility over personality issues should always win the day. But.
I don't think it needs to be Pat. I think it should be one of his teachers.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything else for Mr. Carter or Mr. Kleinhardt?
I just want to thank you for starting this process. I haven't read through all the documents. Like Terry, I got every other one.
We will go back and fix those
I think they're there now.
I hired a new VP and
I know. There's a training curve.
First meeting out.
I don't want to do the bus already.
I will tell you that I am very fortunate to have the new VP that I have, and I am very excited.
Actually, I want to tell Mr. Kleiner, thank you for going over the rubric and explaining. I appreciate that a lot.
It's been a privilege sitting here, Madam Chair. This board is outstanding. Craig, I'm envious. We're gonna have a great time doing this. They're invested,
Mhm.
passionate, and you can all be very proud of what they do. And I'll be happy to come back, and we'll be working with Mr. Carter, Ms. Watkins as we move through the process. And I'll be there for you every step of the way.
I hope we at least got you dinner or something, you know.
Well, yeah, I got a piece of salmon waiting for me.
We better take a cookie for the road.
I'll take it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Katie, apologize for not recognizing you. I'm still trying to learn your face, but congratulations again. And thank you for being here.
Of course.
I didn't recognize you without the pearls.
Oh, yeah, my signature piece.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think Jim was there first.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
He
We only
does
have
that.
one.
Yeah.
There's always one cow in the corral.
What you got yourself in for, Craig?
Yeah.